All right, top of the afternoon to all of you. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Kaylee, could we get a roll call, please?
Chair Kavanaugh?
Here.
Vice Chair Taylor?
Here.
Commissioner Claren?
Yo.
Commissioner Kaufman?
Here.
Commissioner Toops?
Here.
Martin, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance? At this point, we have an opportunity for public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on things that are not on the agenda. If you have a comment, please step up to the podium. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. Now we're going to move on to the selection of the chair and vice chair for this coming year. And if the public's not aware, we rotate this so that we all get a chance to do it. And the staff is going to facilitate this election.
Sure, thank you. And I'd normally say good evening, but it's more like good afternoon. So we'll start tonight or this afternoon with chair. Typically what we do is we'll allow an opportunity for nominations, and then whoever is nominated will check to make sure that they accept that nomination. And if so, then we'll do a roll call in favor of that. And then once our chair has been selected, if that chair would like, they can then take a call for vice chair, or we can just keep doing it with staff running it. Everyone okay with that? Okay. So we'll do first any nominations for chair for Planning Commission this afternoon.
I'll nominate Jason.
I second that. Okay. Commissioner Toops, do you accept?
I do. Thank you.
Okay. And Kaylee, if you want to do a quick roll call.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Do we have to wait for any other nominations?
Are there any other nominations?
No.
Okay. Didn't seem like anyone was jumping up to nominate anyone else.
Just want to be thorough.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
She was dotting an I and crossing a T.
Perfect.
Commissioner Taylor?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaufman?
Yes.
Commissioner Claren?
Of course.
Commissioner Toops?
Yes.
Okay. Motion carries. Congratulations, Chair Toops. Would you like to run the vice chair nomination process, or would you like us to
something to say for it, so yeah, sure.
Okay.
I guess I can.
Okay. All right.
This will be a good test. So normally, as everyone knows, the vice chair moves into the chair role, and I want to thank Sammy for seconding my nomination, because my understanding is Sammy did not want to do that because of time constraints. However, I'm looking at Sammy now and wondering if you would like to continue on in the vice chair role. And if so, I'd like to nominate Sammy for vice chair.
Second.
I will accept that nomination.
Great.
Thank you, Jason.
Chair Toops?
Yes.
Vice Chair Taylor?
Yes.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Commissioner Claren?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaufman?
Yes.
Perfect. Motion carries. Thank you both.
Start the
Congratulations.
All right, this is my first time, so please bear with me. The next item is the approval of the minutes for the February 26, 2026 draft minutes. Are all in favor, or any edits?
Coral, any edits?
A question on page 7, under the heading Goal 4. I think did the program 4.b. Did it used to say within 15 days, or did it used to say something weird like 1 to 15 days?
It had a range between 10 to 15.
Can we get the right range in there? That's all I had.
Wait a minute. What are you asking?
There's just a number missing in here. So under 4B, it used to say respond to complaints within 1 to 15 days or something like that. This is on page 7 of the minutes.
I thought we changed it to within 10 is what I thought we did, right?
It says it just doesn't have the correct old language in here.
Oh.
It does have the respond to
news.
complaints within 10 days correctly. Yeah, thanks.
Testing my old man memory, you know.
All right, with those edits, do we have a motion?
I'll motion with Coral's edit.
Second.
Do you need a roll call or can we? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item, 7.1, minor review. Estates Meadows Housing Project Time Extension, which was an item continued from February 17th, which was a canceled Planning Commission meeting. So over to Yumi Don for the staff presentation.
Good afternoon. We'll talk about the Estates Meadows Housing Project, and I'll give you a little overview about where we are, where this project is. It's located on Estates Drive over by the regional park. It's located in a general plan designation, medium density residential, 6 to 12 dwelling units per acre, as a zoning of high density residential, 12 to 18 dwelling units per acre. And the entire project site, including the existing senior apartments, is 10.4 acres, but since then it's been subdivided into two parcels, 7.6 acres and 2.1 acres on the southern side, and then there's a right-of-way parcel area that's making up that difference. That project background for the Estates Meadows project, it was on a project, there's an existing 60-unit senior apartment project on the northern side, and then the project is located, that we're talking about today, is located on the southern portion, which is a 30-unit affordable senior housing project with community room, with bike storage and patio. That means that it's deed restricted, it would be deed restricted to people who are 55 years or older, and with an AMI of 50 to 60%. All the units were proposed to be one-bedroom units, and then they proposed to subdivide the parcels, as noted, which has been completed since the project was approved. The project at the time was approved for a development permit with project amendment to establish 11 or more residential units for ground disturbance over 26,000 square feet, and to amend the underlying permit for the existing development. There was also a minor use permit since the project was located within 200 feet of a wetland, a planned development to request modifications for development standards, with the mandatory project feature criteria being met through the 100% affordable housing project, and then a tentative map to subdivide, which, as noted, has been completed. That project was approved May 17, 2022, and the effective date after the appeal period was May 30th, 2022. The land use entitlements expired 4 years expired May 30th, 2024. The state automatically extended the housing development projects 18 months to November 30th, 2025. And then the time extension application was submitted before that date, at November 30th. So staff determined that state extension was just an extension of the original approval, and so that the 2-year time extension that we allow in our development code was still available. So in order for the Planning Commission, the original review authority, to grant this time extension that's being requested today, is two findings have to be made. The permittee has to make a good faith effort to exercise the permit and has exercised due diligence in seeking to establish the permit. And then the land use permit and approved use needs to be found to be in compliance with the current development code and the current general plan. So far, as noted, the parcel map was recorded in 2023, so that's taking some steps towards exercising the permit. The applicant has stated that they have completed 90% design level plans at the moment, and they have been searching for funding, and they've had a couple meetings with staff trying to talk about funding, finding areas where we could support them on this project. Since the project was approved, it has the development code and the general plan has changed. It was approved under the 2025 general plan and the 2020 development code. So since then, there are some changes that have been made to our regulatory environment. The land use designations have changed, but the project is still consistent with those land use designations. New conditions. So there are some changes to the development code that mandate that we need to change some of our conditions in the project. And those two areas are in bicycle parking and the wetland setback. So condition 53 is recommended to be changed from the required 3 spaces to continuing on the 3 spaces, but also adding 30 long-term spaces. The project does have an interior bike parking storage area that could accommodate some amount of parking. That number is unknown so far. But the quantity in our development code could be amended by the director once we get to that point at the building permit level. So if there's justification for reduction, which there could be with a senior housing project, we could reduce that 30 long-term parking number to whatever may be necessary to accommodate the project. And then as part of condition number 43, there was an existing requirement that the setback be determined through the minor use process. There was a very little setback that the project was proposing in terms of site disturbance close to the wetland. The new requirement in the development code requires a 10-foot wetland setback and fencing and signage. There was already an expectation of fencing and signage with the existing requirement, but the 10-foot setback could potentially impact the project, but the applicant understands that. We've talked to the applicant about how this could impact the project. They are already anticipating making changes to the scope of their project and may be submitting a project amendment or new project application in the future, which is sort of outside the wetland setback requirement. They were already contemplating changes to accommodate funding sources out in the state and federal government. So they are requesting to keep this approval open, this time extension for 2 years, to keep all options available just in case. Additionally, as part of the original project, the Planning Commission adopted an initial study mitigated negative declaration, which included mitigation measures to reduce impacts to biological resources, cultural resources, geology and soils, hydrology and water quality, transportation, and tribal cultural resources. We reviewed the MND today, found that though the general plan has been updated, no changes have been made that would impact the project, and so the project is consistent with the 2040 general plan. And today we're just asking that the Planning Commission consider adopt the time extension or determine the time extension to be exempt from CEQA per section 15061B3, finding that the time extension itself is not making a significant environmental impact. We've received no public comment on this project, and then so today we're asking. Staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt Resolution 2026-04, determining the project exempt from CEQA per Section 15061B3, and approving the 2-year time extension for the States Meadows housing project. As always, you have alternatives. You can continue this public hearing to a date and time certain. The Planning Commission can request additional information from the applicant and/or staff. I do note that the staff could not be here, or the applicant could not be here today, so if there are questions that need to be answered by the applicant, we may need to come back to a future meeting. And then you could find that the exemption is not suitable for the proposed time extension, and then you could also approve the time extension subject to adding, modifying, or eliminating any conditions of approval, or you could deny the time extension on the basis that all of the findings cannot be met. Should you make any action tonight, the appeal period would extend to Friday, March 27th at 5 p.m. So I'm here for any questions.
Thank you. So there's no applicant presentation?
That's correct.
All right. So we'll move to questions for staff. I'm going to look to my left first. Coral, do you have any questions for staff? Sammy? Mitch?
Oh, yeah. You hit on something with a bicycle. 35 spots for how many units?
30 spots for 30 units.
So what's the average age of people in the senior center?
I mean, that's a standard based off of all projects,
right.
Not just
So,
seniors.
and I get that. I understand the concept. Mm-hmm. So where I'm going is, if we were to request lowering that, since
Sure.
I would imagine half the people can't be on a bicycle, how would we go about doing that?
You can either talk about lowering it now as part of the condition, or you can rely on the director to have that discussion with the applicant at the time of building permit submittal.
So I'll hold that for discussion then, I guess.
Has the applicant requested that? Or made any,
No.
indicated any desire to
Well,
reduce
they're going
the
to have to
number?
redesign. They're already having trouble finding funding, so this is just going to add to that.
Thanks.
Okay. Commissioner Kaufman, Amy, any questions?
More of a comment. My page here says 19 of 20. There's a staff summary and recommendation. Just in the future, please just tell us an actual summary with, I'm a big fan of bullet points, because I can't really tell what you're recommending here. I mean, I read it over and over again. I separated it out. I kind of figured it out, but it would be helpful to have that in a more digestible format so that it's easier to just get to the point. My understanding is you're not objecting to their eliminating balconies. Is that correct?
We're doing the Estates Meadows project, and no balconies are being proposed to be removed as part of that project.
Okay.
Any other questions?
That's it.
I have one or two kind of on the same line. So I guess I wish the applicant were here because I kind of wanted to know about this existing storage room, how many bikes we think could be stored. Yumi, where is this bike? I haven't, like, what are we talking about exactly, this existing storage room on their current plans? And then sort of my second question kind of related to that is just to confirm, so now we're saying there's a minimum 10-foot setback from the wetlands. Was there no setback prior?
It was determined based off the minor use permit at the time.
Okay. Yeah, that's my only questions for now. I'll let no rush on pulling that up, but I guess we'll be discussing the bike thing in deliberation. So with that, I'm going to open public comment.
I have
one. Sorry, go ahead, Coral.
When I realized I have a question, and it's I think I sent an email on this, but I wanted to make sure it was clear. In the condition 3C, second paragraph, it says a 4-foot split rail fence shall be installed around the perimeter of the wetland fence. And I think we need to pull that second occurrence of the word fence out of there because there is not, in my understanding, already a wetland fence there.
Yes.
I don't know why we would put a fence by fence in this case. Thanks.
Thank you, Coral. Okay, I'm going to open public comment. If you have public comment, please come up to the podium, state your name. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. And when you're done, go to the back to fill out a comment form and hand it to Kaylee. So open for public comment. Being none, I'm closing public comment. All right, let's move to deliberation. So I think the only item I heard, there's two items, right? There's amending, conditions of approval related to the wetland, the and fencing, and the bike storage amount. So I definitely heard interest in talking about the bike storage. I think it'd be great just to go around and kind of hear from each of you on what you think about that. So starting with Mitch.
Okay, so as I'm sitting here as a 63-year-old man with a broken wing, knowing I can't bike for a while, I'm just think it's a little bit overdone to ask for bike parking for seniors in general. I don't think a lot of them can use the bikes, and I would hate for the project to get killed because they can't afford to redesign it or whatever for a couple of bike spots. It doesn't make any sense. I would prefer to leave it where it was. That's where I'm at.
Okay. Coral, your thoughts?
I concur. I think, in this town, it's an active town, so it's one of the reasons we require bike parking. I agree that it's unlikely that all of the residents here would require a bike space, so I wouldn't eliminate all of it, but I could see reducing the number if it facilitates getting this done. I'm in favor of getting this project done.
Great. Sammy?
I mean, my only addition here is that if the applicant didn't have a problem with it, then why are we asking to be accommodating to a request that didn't exist? Yumi, is this the original plan set that had a bike storage room in the original plan set? If the capacity isn't 30, maybe there's some, we can allow the director some flexibility in whatever the current capacity is of the bike storage. It looks, based on this plan, which I know doesn't have, I guess it does have a scale, looks bigger than 3 long-term storage parking spots. But I would like to, I think it's, maybe we don't need 30 1-to-1, but I have a feeling like 55 is not that old and probably are going to ride bikes around, especially if it's in a great part of town that isn't very hilly.
That's why I asked what the average age is. 55 is the beginning age. Then people
we
move
don't know
in
that.
and they age in place for 15, 20 years,
I
and
have
they
a
become
feeling
75 years old.
Our community is very active, and I feel like
that.
having some bike storage that's not on balconies or patios.
I did the uphoiler last week, and I got passed by at least one 70-year-old, so I totally get
So let's
it.
go to the senior center, because I
yes,
do a lot of
yeah.
stuff there, and there's a lot of people there that cannot. What would make sense is a wheelchair parking spots. That would make sense.
I want to hear from Amy, if you want to jump in on the bike storage / wheelchair storage.
I would say if they can accommodate more, great. But their original approval said 3 plus the bike storage, and let's not make them jump through another hoop. I do think they need to accommodate the wetland setback and double fence, single, whatever the number, however many, there should be one fence, right? But I think we have to respect that wetland, so that might need to change. But I don't think we should demand that they have parking for that many.
Okay. Yeah, I hear a strong consensus, and I agree that the bike, going to 30 units required is excessive, and it says that we or the community development director can make a determination as long as we're still meeting the intent of the code here. So the question really is, do we want to come up with either just leave it as is and take this out entirely, or allow the community development director to work with the applicant to find a lower number that is suitable to all parties?
I'm in favor of letting
paths.
the director work with the applicant.
You prefer that? Yeah,
I prefer we remove it. They're going to have enough trouble getting that 10-foot setback. And we need senior housing, so let's not make it harder for them, let's make it easier for them. So I can understand the environmental constraint of the 10-foot setback, but I don't understand the increase in the bike. This doesn't make sense to me from a realistic point of view.
Amy?
I think I'm with Mitch on this one.
Oh, no.
That's fine. I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
Going back to the original requirement.
Going back to the original requirement, I think I could. Realistically, what I think is going to happen is this applicant's going to come back for amendments because they're going to have to change the project substantially, which is probably why they're not here today. And so they really don't care which way this goes. That's my guess. On the matter of the bike storage, I'm okay with it as it was approved, and not adding a new condition of approval. Are you okay with? Do I have consensus on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine, but I think if and when they come back, we'll have to talk about it a bit more.
I agree. Let's talk about the wetlands. Amy, I heard you say that you do want to see this condition added and updated. Anything else to add? Mitch? Anything to add on that one?
Well, I'm going to repeat myself. It's going to cost them a lot of money. That 10 feet's huge, and if you look at the plans, and that could kill the project. They're already having trouble funding, and then we lose out on senior housing. So we constantly talk about housing, but we never actually get it, and these are the reasons. So for me, I would say no.
Okay. Sammy?
I think it's important, and I think we will hear from the community if we don't ask for that 10-foot setback. And I think, I know it's about balancing community preferences and housing and all these other environmental concerns and everything. But I do feel like it's important to include, and again, Yumi, was there an objection from the applicant on the 10-foot setback?
They did note that it would be challenging, but they understood that it was a requirement of the development code.
Then I would like to see it stay.
Okay. Coral?
I think it would be a bad precedent to not require the setback.
Yeah. I'm hearing 3 definites on keeping the setback, and I think I agree with those sentiments as well. So I think the consensus we're landing on is to keep the conditions of approval as written, as drafted for the setback and fencing of the wetlands, but remove it for the bike storage. Does that match everyone's understanding?
With the correction that there's not an existing fence already
yes.
there.
and some grammatical edits to the fencing. Do we have a motion?
I move that we determine the project to be exempt from CEQA pursuant to Section 15061B3 of the CEQA guidelines and approve a 2-year time extension for the previously approved Estates Meadow housing project based on the recommended findings and subject to the recommended conditions of approval with the changes that we request.
I'll second that.
All right. Okay.
Chair Toops,
Yes.
Vice Chair Taylor,
Yes.
Commissioner Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Commissioner Claren,
Yes.
Commissioner Kaufman.
Yes.
All right. The motion passes, and we are now on to item 8.1, Village at Grays Crossing Project Amendment number 3. Back once more to you, me, Don, for a second of 3 staff reports tonight.
Hello again. So we'll talk about the Village at Grays Crossing. This is their third project amendment. Just to give you a little lay of the land, the project is located on the east side of the State Route 89 North between the Hennis Road and Prosser Dam roundabouts. It's at the entrance to the Grays Crossing on the eastern side of 89 North. The project site is located within the Grays Crossing specific plan area. It is the zoning district is neighborhood commercial in the Grays Crossing specific plan, and the project size for the entire pink area, which is the Village at Grays Crossing, is about 16 acres. And then you'll see that the hotel, which we'll talk about a little bit more in detail, is outlined in yellow, and that's about 3.4 acres. Just to give you a little bit of a quick background, we're not going to go into great detail since you've seen this quite a bit in the past. The Grays Crossing specific plan started in 2004, when we adopted the specific plan, EIR, and development agreement, and that looked at a mixed-use project with single family, which has all been subdivided, and much of it has been developed, and the affordable housing at Hennis Flats, and then there was other identified attached housing, which some has been constructed on the north side of the village, and then there's contemplated some more housing that could be constructed as part of the Grays Crossing specific plan. In 2006, a village design was submitted and approved by the Planning Commission, which included a mix of housing types and commercial, as well as a grocery store and an 8-pump gas station. And then in 2007, the Planning Commission reviewed a design change to that project, which was approved, and then in 2011 the permits expired for that village design. 17 of the 24 townhomes that were proposed were constructed on the north side on what's called Annie's Loop now, and then since then the remaining 7 units have been constructed. In 2019 is when we reviewed this iteration of the Village at Grays Crossing, which is everything except those 24 constructed units on Annie's Loop, and that included a 129-room hotel with 5,000 square foot conference center with pool, 5 mixed-use buildings with 21 residential lofts above, and then 24 attached single-family residential units on the eastern side of this area. An 8-pump gas station with convenience store was considered as part of this original 2019 approval, but was removed by the project applicants based off of public feedback. Then since then, there's been 2-year time extensions for this Village at Grays Crossing approval in 2021 and 2023. And so far, the 12 of the 24 townhomes have been constructed, and the fourplex has been constructed. In 2024, we looked at 2 project amendments, the first one being the hotel amendment. They came in with some design changes, increased the hotel footprint a little bit, decreased the conference center a little bit, had quite a bit of architectural changes. The parking changed a little bit, the trash enclosure changed, and then there were some changes to the exterior lighting, signage, and landscaping. And then in project amendment number 2, during that same period, a car wash was reviewed and approved. It was first reviewed by the Planning Commission, and that approval was appealed to the Town Council, who ultimately upheld Planning Commission's approval and denied the appeal. That included a 3,800 square foot car wash that was 100 feet long. It's an automated car wash with 13 parking spaces and 9 vacuum stations. Since then, there was a time extension that was approved in 2025 to extend all the approvals, since these are project amendments. It's one whole Village at Grays Crossing project, which includes the hotel and the car wash, and that extended the approval for that entire project to March 2028. And then we had some changes that were approved as part of the building permit process, which are outlined in your staff report. The project applicant is proposing changes in 4 areas to this project: the hotel design, the parking plan, tentative map, and the phasing plan. And we'll go into a little more detail as we go forward. Just to give you a little bit of an idea of what that project site looks like as a whole, you can see that the north is to the left, 89 north is on the bottom, so it's oriented sideways. 90 degrees. You can see that there's townhomes on the eastern side. The car wash is on the southern side, closest to the bridge. There's a fourplex that was constructed. The hotel is to the north a little bit, and then along Edwin Way and Prosser Dam Road, that connection is the mixed-use building, 3 mixed-use buildings, and then 2 located where there's a little circle not a roundabout, but just a circle feature at grade. The applicants are proposing to change some materials. First, they're proposing to change. On the left, you'll see that these are the approved materials, and then the right is the proposed materials. They're proposing to change the roof from metal to composition shingle, proposing to change all the wood siding on the left-hand side to fiber cement siding, kind of maintaining the same color palette that they originally were approved for. They're proposing changes to the board form concrete, changing that to a tile rather than an actual board form concrete. And then they're proposing some changes to the pavers along the plaza, the outdoor dining area, and in the spa area. Here are some elevations. We can go into a little more detail as we go into analysis. They're also proposing to remove all the balconies on the facades of the buildings. Not all of the guest rooms have balconies, but several do on the second and third floor. You can see that the floor plans are provided up on this slide. And then there are some areas where the balconies will be removed. I'm only showing the approved and proposed for the west and east sides, the longer elevations, for your consideration. Additionally, the applicants are proposing an alternative to the alternative parking plan to accommodate the third floor bar lounge that's in the hotel. As part of the previous permit, a shared use agreement with the 13 spaces at the car wash was approved to meet the parking requirements for public access to that third floor lounge. This time, it appears the applicant is not intending to construct the car wash before the hotel is completed. So since that's part of the condition of approval, and they want to make sure that they can open their bar to the public when it's available, the applicant is proposing. They've offered two different options for the Planning Commission to consider to address this issue. So option one would be to create a valet parking plan on site, and then option two would be to construct the car wash's 13 asphalt parking spaces independent of the building prior to that building being constructed. Additionally, the applicants are proposing a slight change to their tentative map. They've already completed the land division that you can see here. This is the actual map that was completed as part of the final map. No, actually, yeah. So they've removed the fourplex condominiums. They're no longer pursuing that as part of the tentative map or final map, and they're only proposing to continue forward with the condominium plan for the 5 mixed-use buildings, having each of the commercial spaces being one airspace unit, and then each of the residential units being airspace units that can be individually sold for ownership. And then the applicants are proposing a phasing plan. They provided their anticipated construction schedule, which shows that the hotel conference center is front and center. They're expecting to install foundations this summer. And then the timeline shows that they are expecting to complete all buildings by 2031. So they provided when they think foundations will go in, and then when they'll finish construction for each of these items. So tonight, the project request from the applicant team is a development permit amendment to amend the Village at Grace Crossing project as a whole for cumulative disturbance over 26,000 square feet and gross floor area over 7,500 square feet, and to amend the phasing and parking plans, as well as amending the architecture on the hotel specifically. They're also proposing to amend their tentative map to remove the fourplex condominium and to continue forward the rest of their condominiums in those 5 mixed-use buildings. Tonight, the Planning Commission's role is to ensure consistency with the Grace Crossing specific plan and the 2040 general plan, and review the site layout, architecture, and parking and phasing plan. So to talk a little bit more about the topics that are identified in your staff report, materials is one of the items that has been called out in there that staff has some discussion points for Planning Commission to consider. As noted previously, the applicants are proposing to change all wood siding to fiber cement. This fiber cement on the bottom will actually be vertical. They just didn't include that. It would be similar to the one on the actual approved wood siding. And the roofing is proposed to be changed from it was metal to composition shingle. And then, as noted, the board form concrete would be a board form tile. So here's a legend for you to take a look at. You can see that all of those fiber cement siding materials are being changed, and these are the locations where they are primarily located. The orange siding down here is the box rib metal siding that's shown here, but you can see that they are the larger swaths of the building that constitute the majority of the siding on the building. And then on the bottom, you can see the board form concrete tile is located mostly on the frontage of the building at the lower level of the building. So here's some more context for where all of that siding would go. Overall, staff does not have concerns with the change in the pavers, the roof, and the fiber cement siding. Fiber cement siding is a material we're seeing more and more in Truckee due to cost, maintenance, and wildfire risk. However, we are proposing condition of approval 95, which looks at the colors of this fiber cement siding a little more closely. They said, as stated, that they are trying to, with the colors they've chosen, they're trying to closely match the colors that were approved originally. And additionally, they believe that the proposed materials and colors would more closely match the aesthetic of the rest of the village, so that's why they chose those colors. In general, the town's guidelines support authentic materials rather than mimicking other materials. So in this regard, if fiber cement is approved, the Planning Commission could consider if the beige color is appropriate or if it is mimicking the color of wood, and if another color should be considered. Additionally, the ghost town gray might appear white in larger swaths and in the sunlight, which is not a color that is often seen in Truckee buildings, especially newer buildings. If the Commission sees merit in this condition, Condition 95 is written to provide the opportunity to see the materials in person in larger mock-ups on site in the field to see what they look like and whether or not they do actually read as white or if they do read as gray. Based on the findings in the field, the colors could be warmed up or changed with approval from the director. And then additionally, the condition also includes a requirement that alternative dimensions could be considered to potentially avoid mimicking wood. Rather than a horizontal siding, we could look at potentially larger panels of fiber cement, which is a product that has been used in Truckee. And then we can see if that would be appropriate or would be detrimental to the design. The condition isn't necessarily locking in that the colors have to be changed. It would just be at the discretion of the director to determine whether or not it's appropriate or not. If there are concerns, if there aren't any concerns from Planning Commission, this condition can obviously be changed to meet that direction. So the Commission should discuss this condition and whether modifications should be made to it, or if you would like to continue to move on and look at explore other options for the siting. As noted previously, the applicant has, in terms of parking plan, the applicant proposed two options to address the parking needs of the third floor lounge and bar. Option 2, this actually says option 1. Option 2 was to allow the phased construction of the asphalt parking for the car wash. As you can see here, it would be this area down here, the front of the building, before the car wash building is constructed. At this time, staff doesn't support this option just because we typically don't want to see a parking lot that isn't part of the larger project. We want them to be comprehensively developed. And if this parking was intended to serve the actual village, then without the car wash, then it should be designed and built to be comprehensively integrated into the village design. Additionally, we don't know if the car wash would actually be constructed if in a timely fashion, and so having just an empty parking lot or a lone parking lot would be of concern to staff. So at this time, staff's recommending option number 1, which is the valet parking plan. We've included a condition of approval, number 46, supporting this option, requiring a valet plan during peak times that would increase the parking capacity for the bar lounge to 10 spaces, which includes the 25 shared parking reduction from the 13 spaces that was originally required for the bar lounge. The valet plan would require a finalized map, so this is their preliminary map at this time, what they're proposing as part of this discussion, but they would submit a more formalized plan. They would also include an actual plan that for employment, what are the triggering conditions, and then at this time the applicants are proposing that the valet plan be triggered when the hotel is at 90% occupancy. That number seems pretty high considering that there's already a shared parking reduction. And so staff is recommending a 75% occupancy requirement and during peak holiday periods. And that's could be a little bit conservative, but the idea is that it could be an adaptive program that we manage and we could reduce or increase that occupancy amount if we find that there's no need for that much extra capacity. So a 25% reduction, so a 75% occupancy would be 33 of the hotel units would have to be vacant. So that's where we came from in this recommendation. We're also proposing condition of approval number 4, which is the phasing plan based off of the applicant's construction phasing schedule. There are 3 phases that are being proposed. The first one is to exercise the permit, which is installing all the foundations for all the structures in this phase by March 30th, 2028. So that's our typical entitlement schedule, with construction completed 4 years from today, or the effective date, to March 30th, 2030. And that would include the hotel conference center, which the applicants are ready to start foundations this summer, 4 of the townhomes, and then the mixed-use studio lofts A and C, which also have units above that, residential units above that are required for their affordable housing requirements. Phase 2 would include exercising the permits by March 30th, 2030, and completing construction March 2031 for the remainder of the townhomes and then the car wash. And then phase 3 would include completion of the exercising the permit by 2031 and construction completion by 2032, and that'd be for the remainder of the mixed-use buildings. So this was all based off of what they provided us. There's a little more leeway just because they suggested finishing 2030, but I just aligned it with the actual effective date schedules to make sure that it's sort of clean and clear for everybody that March 30th is kind of the important date to keep in mind. And then we've put together this visual for you, so that'll maybe help you understand that the phase 1 would be the hotel conference center with the mixed-use buildings on the most northern part of the village, and then the the townhomes on the eastern side, and then phase 2 would be the remainder of the townhomes and the car wash, and then the 3 mixed-use buildings shown in green would be phase 3. I'm also, at this time, I haven't this wasn't part of your staff report, but I put this phasing plan together as part of the presentation, but I thought it might be useful to include it as part of the resolution. So I'm recommending that we include that as part of the resolution. And then the phase 1 the park wasn't really included anywhere. It is a requirement to finish construction of the park prior to final of the hotel conference center. So we just wanted to package that all together. So that's also being proposed as a change to the phase 1. Today we're proposing that if for environmental review, there was a EIR adopted in 2004 as part of the Grays Crossing specific plan adoption. If the Planning Commission finds that the project is consistent with its specific plan, which is what staff is recommending with the conditions of approval incorporated, we could determine the project to be exempt from additional environmental review pursuant to Public Resources Code section 21083.3 and CEQA section 15183, finding the project consistent with the specific plan, which then means that the EIR is appropriate to be used for this project. We've received 1 public comment, which is actually in your staff report, not online, in the public additional information folder. We received it from a neighbor who was concerned about the proposed architectural changes and the parking plan of the project. So today's staff's recommendation is to adopt Resolution 2026-06, determining the project exempt per Public Resources Code section 21083.3 and CEQA section 15183, and approving the 3rd project amendment to the previously approved Village at Grays Crossing. And we did make quite a bit of changes. We've consolidated all of the resolutions and conditions of approval into this resolution, so this will serve as the final comprehensive approval moving forward. It did make it so that the numbers don't correlate. It does make it a little challenging to follow. There are some minor changes that I made in terms of cleaning up language, clarifying, making sure we understand it's the hotel condition versus a car wash condition. But the main substantive changes are the ones that are in your staff report. So there are alternatives that we discussed earlier. You can continue the public hearing. You can request more information, add or modify the conditions. You can deny the project on the basis that 1 or more of the required findings cannot be made. And then you can require additional environmental review. And if you do take action today, the appeal period ends Friday, March 27th at 5 p.m.
Thank you, Yumi. Is there an applicant presentation?
Microphone, please.
Yeah, press the button and it'll turn green. The red
Perfect.
button. There.
Got it. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Yumi, and everyone for putting that presentation together and hearing what we've got for this project amendment today. We're really excited about this project and finally getting to the point where we're going to be, we broke ground this last summer and looking forward to get moving on the hotel component this year. And so you've already obviously heard Yumi, kind of go through a lot of these things. So just wanted to give a few more points on some of these that we were considering here. I'll start with the parking. Last time when we were here for the last project amendment, it was approved that we'd have the 13 spots at the car wash. We wanted to come up with something a little bit different if we didn't end up building the car wash, and so we think that this valet plan can really work well, and then serve guests too. It'll work well for us, and then work well for the additional use. And we're really excited about the third floor bar and lounge. We think it's going to be a great addition to the town. That'll be great. The next one I'll move into is some of the architectural changes. Siding changed from wood to fiber cement. A few things on that. One, the overall durability. I did a takeoff on our building, and we've got about 40,000 square foot of siding on this building, and so durability, wear and tear, the maintenance that we're going to have to be doing on the wood is going to be extensive. And so with the climate and everything else, we really feel that moving to this other type of material is beneficial from a long-term look standpoint and from a maintenance standpoint. Helps us with LEED certification as well. It is a green material. 40,000 square foot of cedar is roughly 60 trees. Just a few things on that. Balconies, massive fall risk, and we have a third-party management company that will come in and manage this hotel, and we've spoken to them extensively about this. They operate about 150 hotels throughout the United States, and they try to steer away from balconies as much as possible in their hotels, just ice, and if children go out on balconies and whatnot. Our balconies aren't very large. They aren't even large enough to put a chair out there and sit out there. So we don't think they're the juice is worth the squeeze on the hazard there. Also, from a building envelope standpoint, we'd get rid of that sliding window or slider and just put a window there, further just kind of sealing up the building, and the building efficiency overall. Roofing, changing from standing seam to comp roof. Repair, maintenance costs, we think that's really going to be beneficial on this size of a project. Same with fire hazard. I was just talking to our insurance broker about this, and the comp is what they would recommend. The last one is the board form concrete there. That is a framed wall. We always were proposing that it was going to be simulated. So we're open to discussing that if you don't think that a simulated concrete, but it is a framed wall, so it was never going to be an actual, formed concrete wall. Any other questions, let me know. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so now we'll turn to commission questions for either staff or the applicant, and I'll start on the left side here. So Coral, any questions? Yes, we'll come back to you, Sammy.
Yes, I have some questions. I think I'll start with the applicant first, if that's okay. A couple of things you just mentioned piqued my interest. So first, the hotel operator that you identified when we heard this is still on board?
Same, correct.
Okay, same one. And then you mentioned LEED. Are you pursuing LEED certification for the hotel?
We're pursuing LEED certified, correct.
Just LEED certified. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. So for building design and construction, is that the rating system you're using?
Say that again?
Building, design, and construction, is that the lead rating system that you'll be pursuing?
I believe so. That's correct.
Okay, that's helpful. Why did you get rid of the pool? I know this was a previous decision you made with the community development director, but it just seems to. Why did you get rid of the pool?
Yeah, we thought that with the limited space we had out there, we wanted spas. Like, we thought that was for sure a thing that we wanted. We just wanted more of an outdoor activation space. So now we have several different fire pits that are surrounded in that courtyard, and then just more of an kind of an outdoor activation area. So, people can hang out there. We just didn't really think a pool was a massive necessity or a driver for the property.
And by spa, what do you mean exactly?
I think it's an 8-foot in diameter, hot tub type.
Okay.
There's 2 of them.
Got it. Okay, 2. Okay, I have some other questions, but I don't know how we
Go ahead and ask all your questions now, and then we'll.
Okay,
If you think they're too deliberation-y, we can hold them.
Yeah.
Up to
Well,
you.
moving on to the phasing plan, I just want to ask, has funding been secured for most of these phases? Why did you prioritize certain things for phase 1 versus phase 2, 3? Could you explain a little bit your reasoning and rationale behind the phasing plan?
Yeah. For one, the hotel was front and center because, from what we experienced in building out the first part of the townhomes and the fourplexes, the construction site is very large, and, we didn't want a lot of homes and activity going on and building all that up, and then that falsely getting impacted once the hotel was being constructed. So we figured construct the hotel first as kind of the massive, the bigger disturbance, and then work out from there.
Okay, thank you. I think I'll stop there.
Great questions. Commissioner Mitch.
Mitch. Are we just going for applicant right now?
No, staff or applicant questions either.
I'm going to start with the applicant then. Fourplex construction denied the ability to condoize. Why? What did you do? Right, in the staff report it says that they couldn't condoize the fourplex. Was I reading that right?
Because of the way it was constructed, I think it said.
Yeah, I was confused on that.
Martin, do you want to speak on that one?
Originally, it was always anticipated, as many projects, you don't know whether you want to do for sale units or you want to do rental. And they made the decision when they were doing improvement plans that they were going to go rental. And so they built it that way, and they didn't want to condominiumize and sell airspace on the individual units. They're going to keep them as deed restricted, affordable.
So you say built it that way. What's the difference when you're building it for rent or for sale?
Some of the wall requirements, I think some of the attic fire code, I think, requires some different changes, and possibly some differences in electrical. Chris, I don't know if that sounds right, but there is changes.
There's slight changes to make it.
Yeah, there is changes to the structure that allow you to sell a unit separate.
What happens to the building now? So it's just going to be owned by one owner and rented out. That's just have it its own APN, and that's it.
And it's deed restricted, and all that was done. And just a couple other things maybe to add to the previous questions, just adding on what Matthew was talking about, the pool. If you look at the height of the building and that there's no really southern exposure to that, it's a very shaded area, if you will, and a pool, that was also a consideration of why a pool might not have been most effective in that area. So anyways.
And you prefer option 2 or option 1 for the parking plan? I think I heard option 1. Because we did discuss the 13 spots at the car wash, and now you're preferring a valet?
Correct.
And then the staff's recommendations, how do you feel about that?
I have no hard feelings about the staff recommendations as far as the siding materials and the. Is that what you were asking about as far as those?
No, as far as the parking plan specifically, because you wanted 90%, they want 75%, which I think makes more sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So. I'm going to have Martin explain that one. He went through all the math on the occupancy percentages, so I'll let him run through that one.
we'll see if my memory, and yes, see if you, as some of the commissioners that were on here, contradict me. But what I kind of remember when we originally got that approved last time, and we were basically staff had it to where the bar was not going to be open to the public. It was going to be for patrons that were staying at the hotel only. And we heard a pretty strong sentiment from the Planning Commission, like, no, this is going to be a cool amenity. We want this open to the public. How do we make that happen? And that's when we kind of offered, well, hey, and it was on the same hearing night, we got the car wash approved, and after hours, we can use those 13 spaces. I think wholeheartedly, Planning Commission generally said, that sounds great. 13 spaces sounds like that bridges the gap between allowing public usage instead of just hotel patrons. So moving forward here, and the car wash isn't quite ready to go prime time and go into construction, we basically talked to staff and said, hey, car wash isn't ready. We could build an interim parking lot. We'd basically have to rip it completely out when you construct the car wash because there's going to be utilities and all those other things that go with construction of that. But we could get the 13 spaces active. And staff asked, do we have any other options? We did look at, we can probably pick up 4 or 5 spaces along the right-of-way, but it's a lot of work for not a lot of gain. And so we looked at a parking plan, and basically the math, if you take 90% occupancy, it equates to 13 rooms. If 13 rooms are empty, that's 13 spaces. So we came up with the 90% basically by the mathematics, saying it's the same practical effect, and that's what we're offering. And obviously, they want a very successful hotel. They want a very energized, active space. They're going to lower that percentage internally if they need the parking, if parking becomes a concern. So that's how we came up with that, was the 90%.
I'd like to follow up on that question. So I because there's been some different numbers in our different meetings, what is the current applicant's current feel for what the patrons of the lounge and restaurant will be percentage-wise, hotel, non-hotel? The users of the amenity.
Trying to remember exactly back. I don't know if you have it handy, Yumi, but we did provide, one of the things staff asked us for is, hey, do you have any backup to this information and that type of thing when we were kind of trying to determine what's that mix? And I think
70-30, 70% hotel patrons, 30%.
Mike.
And of course,
Mike.
Yeah, so 70-30 is what Matthew recalls in the letter that we provided from the operator that, again, operates like 150 hotels.
So I guess this is a question for staff then, too, because in the staff report it says, for the 20,000 square foot restaurant with service area, using the applicant provided assumption that 50% of the users would be hotel guests and 50% of the users would be members of the public, staff determined 13 parking spaces would be required. This seems like a big coincidence to me. But so this is 50. Which numbers do
I
we
believe
think
the
are right?
70-30 split was for the restaurant, and then for the bar lounge they said 50%. I think that's what my parking calculations show.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Mitch, any more questions?
Yeah, I'm not done.
Yeah.
Somewhere, I can't remember where, so I did this last week. I wrote a note about why is timeline based on sales a bad thing. So I think that was in the staff report.
The staff report didn't intend to say it was a bad thing. I think that's just why it was a little bit of an interesting phasing plan versus what our typical phasing plans look like.
Another thing to add just to the phasing, if this helps, there is a lot of thought process that goes into it in terms of build out of infrastructure. Again, I think Matthew explained well about how the hotel's the big driver. That's the big disturbance in the neighborhood, if you will. But there's a lot of utilities and access and different things that have to get to the hotel that can kind of get constructed that set up the 3 buildings to the north. And also our phasing plan has always been based on what did we do first? We did the roadway improvements were substantial. What did we do second? We did the fourplex because we had to get our affordable housing online to stay ahead of our affordable requirement as we went. So infrastructure, the affordable requirement to stay that consistent with how much development we bring forward, those are kind of how you see the map develop. And then obviously we want to be good neighbors. After you construct something, you don't want to immediately build something immediately right next door that's huge. So.
Got it.
Okay.
Could we bring up COA number 49, please?
This one?
So is the applicant okay with that?
This was already addressed. It was just a carryover from the previous.
It was?
Yeah.
You're talking about 49, is that what you said?
49.
Yeah, we
Okay.
sent that back.
Making sure. Then the only other question I have for staff really is, I'm confused if the goal is to have the buildings look like the rest of Ray's Crossing, why would we want to push or why would we want to push the fakeness of the wood? So if we're trying to make it look different and we're purposely going vertical where they were going horizontal, and we're removing the wood tone, the wood grains, and making it smooth, I'm confused on that concept. I think if we're trying to make it look like Ray's Crossing, what they proposed tries to do that with a different material.
I mean, overall, the design of the hotel is quite different from the rest of the project. I mean, the material palette may be different, but the scale of the buildings, the actual architectural forms are different than the rest of the townhomes, the fourplex, and the mixed-use buildings. They were all also designed by two different architects, so there are some changes. The changes that we're proposing, we're not necessarily saying you need to go do a 180 and go different, like do bright colors or neon or anything like that. We're just trying to be true to our design guidelines that say that we should not be mimicking natural materials. If it's not that material, it shouldn't be pretending to be that material.
Well, we have a history of that with the hotel on 267, which used to be the Hampton Inn. That when that project got approved, they proposed a faux wood grain hardy siding, and the Planning Commission approved that with a flat material instead, which has actually been beneficial over time because now it's painted a dark gray, and so it still looks nice. It just doesn't have that simulated wood effect. So we do have a precedent for that.
How does the applicant feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, as far as colors go, I mean, just kind of as Yumi mentioned, we were trying to hold true to the colors that, it's all paint grade, correct? And so we could always experiment with different paint colors. But we felt that, and the architectural team kind of looked at this thing 6 ways from Sunday, just trying to figure out how it would match with the rest of the village.
So the question is, they're asking you to go vertical where you're horizontal and to go smooth instead of wood grain, which is what you submitted. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, we've submitted smooth, and so I have no problem with the smooth. And
I don't think there's any change to vertical and horizontal. I think it was just the image was the sample image was wrong. Yeah. Is that right, Yumi? Okay, I'm getting a nod from Yumi.
That's correct.
There is a comment in the staff report about potentially considering panels as opposed to board-shaped. That might cause difficulties.
Before we had a discussion, I'm going to protect somebody that doesn't need protection, right? So that's why I'm asking. So thank you.
Thanks.
Amy, any questions?
Everyone's pretty much covered mine.
Great. Back to Coral.
Nothing further, thanks.
Okay. I think most of mine were covered. I'm just going to run through these really quick. Could you just explain a little bit again the board form concrete versus board form tiles? So I looked at the justification letter and it didn't really talk about that, and then it kind of came out in the staff report that staff thought it was going to be board form concrete and you're suggesting board form tiles.
Sure.
Can you explain why?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe Chris could speak to this a little bit better, but that is, it's all a wood frame building. So that facade that you're seeing right there, there's no concrete form that we could do there. I mean, so it was always going to be some simulated type of concrete. The product that we've proposed, the architectural team thinks will look extremely similar to concrete. They also believe that it's going to hold up a little bit better over time than concrete, not stain. It's a panelized product, exactly. Obviously it's going to be waterproof as well. It's not going to be bringing in water like concrete would. And so that was the thought there.
So were you guys going to put concrete over framing originally? What was the original?
From my understanding, the intent was always to have some type of simulation on the front.
That help?
Yeah. Thank you. And then no one's asked about this yet, but the balconies change. So I understand the health and safety concern for the operator. That makes sense. I think your justification letter referenced some kind of enhancements around the window treatments just to kind of replace the balconies were providing a visual effect as well, not just a use for hotel guests. So what change? Could you explain again what the changes you were suggesting to kind of promote the aesthetic appeal that is going to go on those windows?
Yeah, and so after removing those, the architectural team looked at just some simple trim packages that could go around the windows just to add a little bit of differentiation.
Okay, got it. And that's just like a wood trim, or I
Correct.
guess in this case fiber cement
Correct.
trim, or all right, got it. Thank you. And then I just want to clarify, do you have any concerns about the phasing plan as written in condition of approval number 44? Thank you. Are you guys good with the phasing plan?
Yeah, I'm good with it. Obviously we're gonna do our best to act as we put forth.
Great. And then I have a few. That's all my applicant questions. Thank you. Sure. I have a few quick questions for staff. Could you, Yumi, could you pull up the phasing map again? That was really helpful. So I have two questions, kind of, I guess, related to this map. So first, remind me how many units are in the hotel rooms, and how many parking spaces are being built in phase 1? Or are available at the end of phase 1, I should say.
I don't know if I have that exact number.
Okay.
Let me pull up the actual plans.
What is it, setting aside the phasing, how many is it again?
It's 271 physical parking spaces.
271 spaces, and how many hotel rooms?
129.
Wow, okay. 129 hotel rooms, 271 parking spaces. On that map, it looked like many of those parking spaces were part of phase 1, or we could just go off the map and kind of eyeball it. So the only ones that are not in phase 1 are a handful in phase 3 on the exactly, those two, and then of course the car wash, which we're not counting anyway. So probably around 240 parking spaces at least, maybe 250 it looks like. Okay. And then the other question I had is, so I think I did, the condition of approval is suggesting we go with the valet approach as requested by the applicant. If they eventually do build the car wash in phase 2, or whenever it does get built, would we then drop the valet requirement?
Not as currently written. I did contemplate whether or not we should allow for the either option, just in case the car wash did somehow get off the ground earlier. But if there is interest in that, that's something we could build into the conditions.
Okay, interesting. All right. Those are my only questions, I think, for now. So we will now open public comment. Oh, sorry, Coral, did you want to add something?
How would the applicant feel about including that in the conditions? The option to possibly switch away from the valet plan if the car wash is sped up. If that would be desirable, we can talk about that.
Yeah.
Then. Thanks.
Thank you, Coral. Any other questions from commissioners? All right, let's move to public comment. If you have public comment, please state your name, come to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes. At the end of 3 minutes, there'll be a buzzer. And when you're done, please fill out a comment form and see Kaylee in the back. Any public comments? Okay, seeing none, I'm closing public comment, and we're moving to commission deliberation. All right, so I think for deliberation, the way I'd like to tackle this is there's really 2 broad topics here. There's design topics and the parking. I think I'd like to go through design first and then come back through parking. Is that all right with everyone? I'm seeing nods. All right, so let's starting with design. That includes all the fiber cement stuff, all the balcony stuff, any other changes that are worth discussing. Let's start over here. Amy, do you want to start us off?
There is some concern about the color, the gray, reading as white, but it sounds like it's painted, or it could be painted. Now, of course, I'm looking at the applicant, but we can't ask questions. But as long as that's clear, that it's got to be, you got to actually take a sample outside and take a look at it, make sure it doesn't read white. That's a concern. I understand the balconies, and that change does not bother me.
Thank you. Mitch.
Oh, I already said my piece.
You are deferring to the applicant on all things? I can't remember.
Yeah, so the applicant doesn't seem to have issues with staff's response to their submittal, so it's fine the way it's written.
Sammy?
I want to talk about the balconies a little bit. I was disappointed to see a lot of these architectural changes just because I thought the hotel was really nice before when it was initially approved. I feel that changing these materials, I understand the arguments that you're presenting, but to me it also feels like we're cheapening the design of this hotel. And to differentiate, I mean, one of the things that differentiated this when we originally approved it was that it wasn't the Hampton Inn, that it wasn't the Spring Hill Suites across the street. It was a higher quality, higher end lodging option. And so removing some of these amenities, you know, the balconies specifically, moving from wood to fiber cement, like it just feels to me that it doesn't have the same high quality design and materials that it did when we approved this originally. So I don't know if I'm the only person that feels that way, but I would like to discuss, you know, the potential of moving back to wood. I understand the justification in terms of durability, you know, life and safety risk of the balconies, but I also know if you're just pursuing LEED certified, you don't need, you know, to use fiber cement in place of real wood. You don't need to get your like points and credits. I also know that like sealing the windows and from the sliding doors or whatever doors were there isn't going to help you meet your Title 24 if that's what your problem is. So I would like to talk about those design changes a little bit more and hear what the other commissioners have to say about that.
Thank you. Coral.
Yeah, on the design changes, I have some similar concerns. I think that the fiberboard, especially on these really large expanses on the west elevation and the north elevation, the west elevation being very visible from the road, somewhat visible from the road. These are huge expanses, and it is going to cheapen the appearance of it and make it look a little more Disney, if you know, in my opinion. The color will be very important. We've been presented an option to let the applicant work with staff on this, but I do want to express that concern. The balconies, I can understand somebody's going to have to shovel them. I don't know how that works when it's in a hotel room, so I can understand the maintenance of that would be a little bit challenging. I do think that they provide a nice look, the hotel. I was very impressed with the previous design of this hotel, and it's not quite as pretty now. And the design change on the roof. Oh, sorry. What do you call them? Disclosures. I spoke with a structural engineer about this, and I spoke with the fire marshal about this. Doesn't seem like comp roof is more fire resistant than metal. And that my discussions and looking up things would suggest that a metal roof would be more fire resistant, and I do think we need to make sure
They're both Class A.
Yeah, and if it meets WUI, then it's all
right.
Fine, and I think it would look okay. It's the other design changes that I think detract by comparison to the previous version.
Thanks. Yeah, open up for any other commissioners. So we've got a couple. I was also a bit concerned about the cheapening of the design. I'm maybe more open to fiber cement. I actually like the colors as proposed. I'm not concerned about it being too close to wood. I think the fiber cement panels look really cheap, so I wouldn't go that direction. But definitely open to what the rest of the commission thinks. I was concerned about the balconies too. I felt like they added something. I was wondering if a Juliet balcony would be an appropriate solution, but I don't think it solves the health and safety concern. So, that's why I didn't bring it up earlier. But yeah, open to whatever everyone else thinks.
Lots of hotels have balconies.
So I'm going to start talking about the fiber coming from. I also do architectural standards in Tahoe Donner, as we know, and I sit in a lot of those meetings, and every single project coming in is cement, fiber cement board, every one of them. So I think forcing wood is almost like forcing yesterday's style. Keep that in mind. I also personally feel that wood is incredibly environmentally unfriendly by the amount of times you have to stain it, sandblast it, sand it, stain it, sandblast it, sand it. It's unbelievable the amount of maintenance it takes to make it look good. And with the state of California's codes for stains, they're horrible. You got to do it 2 or 3 times as much as you used to have to because they don't work anymore. So as much as I'm not a fan of fibers, I don't like the look myself. I feel just the style is going in that direction, and forcing somebody to put wood on is environmentally unsensitive and aesthetically unsensitive due to the fact that everybody's doing it, and wood's just going to be old soon.
I have a question for you, Mitch. In Tahoe Donner, do you require the fiber cement to be smooth, or do you allow the wood effect?
Okay, so in Tahoe Donner, we're not supposed to have any fake materials because the rules were written in 1972 when fake materials actually looked fake. Now that they look a lot closer to the real thing, we're trying to get people to emulate it. So using the intent of the Tahoe Donner original code, which was we don't want fake looking, we require you to use the wood grain in Tahoe. You can't use smooth.
As someone who lives in a Tahoe Donner wood stained house, we get to enjoy both the cost and inconvenience of the maintenance. I understand the maintenance of that much wood would be enormous, not to mention disruptive to the guests. Just if a decent look can be achieved, I don't care what's coming in or out of fashion in Tahoe Donner. But as I said, I have concern about these huge expanses. If you could show the west elevation, yeah, those are big flat expanses, which would have looked better in wood.
And they've reduced the windows. They've taken away some of the windows treatments that were on those expanses from when it was approved to now. So the expanses have increased, and for some reason, they eliminated the sign that said the Scout or whatever. They took that away.
We requested that they follow the sign plan, or to follow the sign guide.
Right. But they took away sort of a decorative element. It didn't have to be a sign. But so there are a lot of things that have kind of disappeared in the second version. And I'm all for saving trees. So, and I see a lot of I run around our neighborhood a lot, and they're actually kind of nice, the concrete ones, and I feel like, oh well, that's less likely to go up in flames. So there is that kind of safety element, especially when you have a lot of guests and people and things going on. So I'm kind of, might not look as great, but I do think we need to request some treatment to those expanses that are just going to look like giant blank walls.
I have a question for Yumi. You're recommending approval, obviously, and making, there's some conditions of approval on some of the colors and treatments, but how did, I think we can all agree, yes, there's less ornamentation. We lost the balconies, for example. How how does this, stack up against the specific plan, like what the requirements are of the specific plan? Does it require higher quality materials at every turn? I'm just trying to understand like what standards are expected.
The Grace Crossing specific plan for the village district doesn't have very specific requirements for materials. It does it primarily focuses on like reflective materials, brighter materials. Didn't really contemplate fiber cement at the time. When you look at the other districts, like the residential districts, it is very firm on using more natural materials and wood siding.
Okay, that's actually helpful to know.
Yeah, so I visited the site again. It's nice to see this progress out there and the action going on. That's exciting. I'm excited about the lounge and the restaurant too. It's going to be great. This will not look much like the other buildings that are sitting there now. That's one of the things I want. And I don't think it has to be wood. I have concerns about how this will look. And so if we're going to get a good result with respect to the fiberboard colors, especially worried about the beige, then I'm okay with the condition 95 as written.
So let's go to that condition, actually. Yumi, if you could pull it up. You're ready. All right, so let's just go through each of these items and make sure, maybe as a commission, we're good with them. It shall be smooth. I will say this as a personal aside. I actually think the smooth is uglier. Sorry. But I understand that this is consistent with the standards of the town, so I'm not going to impose my personal view here. But I actually do think the textured approach is higher quality looking.
I agree, Jason.
Actually seeing a lot of nods.
That's what we do in TD, and that was me who pushed that.
I understand the reason to not have fake material, fake things that are imitating other things, and is there any danger in having an exception to the code?
I will just add there's a little more history too that went into that design guideline specifically, is that one of the things the community really embraced in this feeling of authenticity in the community was about how materials sort of wear over time too. And so if you have a wood grain look that's actually cement, it's not necessarily going to have that same wear over time that real wood would have. And so I think the community, in coming up with these design guidelines, really wanted to create that distinction of something that's an authentic material like wood, which will change color, thickness, it'll warp over time, it'll have different dimensions to it versus, something that's not a wood material like a cement siding, which is only ever going to have that same look other than maybe you're painting it. We have had some experiences with materials like the hardy board bubbling, and so there is a chance that these will be painted over time too, that it's not just wood that's having to be stained and treated over time, that there is actually some maintenance that goes in with these non-wood materials too. So I think just kind of bringing back why we ended up with that in the design guidelines and why the community wanted to see that sort of put in there specifically was to recognize that Truckee did have some grit, that sort of that feeling of things not being, the same in perpetuity, and that taking the environment and having that affect what the architecture looks like over time was part of why it ended up in the guidelines.
Thank you, Danielle. I love that we're shopping right now, but I definitely don't want to overrule like the community and change anything. I think maybe the only thing I would consider on that condition subpoint A is to say that the texture should be of exceptional high quality, right? That whatever the choice is that it should contribute to the quality of the overall quality of the design. And smooth might be the answer that everyone agrees on, and that's fine. I would kind of defer to the development director here, but I think we all want it to be a high quality outcome.
Yeah, and they presented smooth as what Matt just said, so. Yeah.
I think no pun intended, but then I think we can, since this is already a little bit different than it exists like the other development within Gray's Crossing, can we make it more, like, since it's already different, how do we like how do we complement that and distinguish it as different than, since it's not going to be, and we don't want it to mimic what's already been built.
Yeah. Should we pull up the conditions again? Sammy, I agree with you. I kind of think the conditions as written might already be providing the strength that you're looking for, particularly number B, or letter B. Do you feel that that's sufficiently?
Yeah, I mean, I think that wood tone, wood texture, I mean, let's move away from that if that's where we're going. So yes, I feel like that does potentially solve for that. My question, I guess, to the other commissioners is that something that you would like to see, or do people not mind the close to wood tones of the proposed color scheme?
I'm fine with it, and the applicant seems to be fine with the way it's written, so.
With the condition, or you're fine with the color of
both?
Both. Okay.
I'm not fine with.
You don't want the beige.
No, I don't want the beige, but I'm also comfortable with the applicant working with staff to something that's going to look good. Especially if you're out there holding up things and looking at it and figuring out how it's going to translate to that huge wall.
Can we bring the west elevation back up for a second? So if you're looking at it from left to right, you go from the left corner and then you hit that big, huge gray area, bing, that one, and you keep going and you hit that gray one, a beige, I mean, and then the gray one. Is there a way we could require, since that's facing the road, west is facing the road, some kind of architectural relief? Would that help everybody with big expanse? I kept hearing big expanses. I think those are the three big expanses.
I do believe the gray specific plan, because I had a concern about these expanses when we first approved this. I believe the gray specific plan discourages this type of huge expanse.
And then if we do this approach, we just have to keep in mind that density kind of doesn't live anywhere, so let's make sure we talk about it and don't forget about it because it's a new addition. If we are going to go the page-by-page approach, oh God, how deep are we?
So the last we stopped, we were at the historic design standards. It had felt at the time that we had gone through this entire chapter, but it sounds like there's desire to double back, and it sounds like we have to start from the beginning.
I guess I actually do have a concern, sorry, for my fellow commissioners. I am actually a little concerned about going page by page because staff did not update this with our edits. So I'm worried that we're going to end up like re-editing things that we already edited. I actually think maybe, I know it's not comfortable, but I wonder if we actually go off of the list of topics.
Oh, I'd prefer that.
Okay, so let's pull that. Sorry, Yumi, I'm sending you all over the Windows operating system today. But okay, so, some of these may be not an issue anymore, but we can just go through each one. I think the only thing that's not on here that was noted already in the staff report was just talking about the plan development, if we are okay with that as written or if we want to make any changes. Before we jump into it, are there other topics right now that people know of that they want to add to the list? Okay, cool. So for this, I think what we'll do is we'll go through each one and we'll just kind of popcorn whoever had the concern or wanted to raise it and kind of jump in and say why they wanted to talk about this. So let's start with setbacks. I think that was me. I'm looking around if anyone else had that concern. I think I'm okay to let this one go. My concern was in the tier 1, I think, incentives, or tier 2, I can't remember, incentives, it allows for a 20% reduction in the setback. My concern was that was a pretty small change. If you have a 10-foot setback that just becomes 8, like, did that feel meaningful or not? I'm okay to let that go and leave it as written, unless there's a strong feeling we should increase that. And what
number are you looking at?
I'm looking, it's possible discussion topic number 1, setbacks. It is on the right side here. Can you scroll up a little bit, Yumi? It's an incentive. So as a reminder, it's a tier 2 incentive. So depending on how much they're doing deed restricted, developments get either 4 incentives or 6 incentives or whatever. There's a table right above this, and there, maybe it's below. No, there it is. Yeah, so between 4 and 8 incentives, and then there are 8 possible incentives that are written, and 3 of them have to do with setbacks, and they all allow the development to request a 20% reduction in the setback. My concern is whether 20%, given that many setbacks are like 10 feet, is that going from 10 to 8, is that even real? Is that a real incentive, or does it need to be more to be meaningful?
So people that own the properties next door are assuming that 10-foot setback is in stone. So when we move it even 2 feet, that's a big deal. So I think 20% is more.
Yeah.
And 2 feet could
make a
provide
difference.
you some flexibility in design.
I think it did for you guys.
Yeah. All right, so we'll move on.
Oh, yeah. By the way, I do appreciate the comment that you've designed something to this and it seemed to work well. It's helpful to have that kind of feedback at this stage in our discussions.
Extremely helpful. Yes. Thank you, Carl. All right, so that's it for setbacks. We'll move on. Step backs and massing. So these both were in the objective design guidelines. Yumi, are these only in the historic district or for all projects?
All projects.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to point out, so for massing, it's that they have to meet 2 of the following, A through E or F? A through E. So there are 5 ways to have massing breaks, and it says that the code says that they need to meet 2 of them. They either need canopy, step backs, wall plane change, height change, or roof line articulation. Anyone want to talk about what concerns they had with this as it was written?
Referring to figure 2-50, which I believe I found on the code page 2-130, or in section 1825-60A4, it might be nice to have that figure just repeated here for clarity rather than, I had to go find it.
Yeah, I struggled with that too, Coral. It's in like a totally different chapter, right? It took me a while to find. What is the standard? Do we repeat diagrams or do we not? Do we avoid doing that?
The reason why we didn't is to make sure that if we're changing one, then we don't have to go back and change it to others. But that's a style choice, and if you think it's easier to not cross-reference, we can certainly put that in.
Given how difficult it was for me to find that, I think I would prefer. I would like to make it as easy and clear as possible for someone trying to use this chapter. So I would be in favor of repeating it. I don't know if whatever software this is written in has a cross-reference figure capability. Okay.
Maybe it's Word.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Great. So we're going to repeat the figures.
Then this also means that balconies will be over lower floors, correct?
The canopy? Is that what you're referring
Canopies.
to?
Well, it means if there's a balcony on a step-back floor, it's going to be over a lower story.
Yeah, it would use the roof potentially as a deck.
Well, that's tricky construction-wise, if I'm not mistaken. I'm looking at you, Mitch.
The hotel downtown has these step-backs already built into them, right? Arnie use as an example that it's being done.
We did ask them to step it back, and there's examples of it all over town. Is it getting easier to keep it from leaking in the floor belows?
You can either confirm or deny that rumor at this time.
I think what I liked
the
about
idea of the step backs. It's a concern.
Anything that penetrates the roof or changes the direction of the roof or is a potential for leaks. Valleys, ridges, vents, elevator shafts, step backs. signs, lights.
The new and innovative solutions will affect the industry.
I mean, the requirement for the balconies isn't necessarily for every unit, so it may not just be that the second unit where there's step backs, they may not have the balconies.
What I liked about this section was it lets the developer choose what type of massing breaks they're selecting. So if canopies are not appropriate, they don't have to do a canopy. But if it changes, they can choose that. So I thought it was well written, and I didn't have any. I saw it was in the notes of discussion topics, so I studied it, but I didn't have any changes. All right, so moving on, let's check those off. Material variation is also in this section somewhere.
Up.
B.
I have my notes on B say too restrictive.
Okay.
And why 20%? Not 30%. Why not 15? You know, like why?
Does
Yeah,
this
I thought
match
it should
the
be-
You mean,
objective
is there
design?
a reason for the 20%, or would you just like that kind of number?
Well, we have to make it an objective standard, so it is a little bit arbitrary, but the number that we chose was is less than the majority. It's a pretty small minimal number. If you want to see variation, such as in the village at Grace Crossing when you saw the large swath of material, if you want to break it to 20%, you can think about what that looks like. If you want it to be less, or if you don't care, then that's all within your purview to recommend.
And if I was to use that as an example, and that was broken into 3 sections, it would be 33%, right? So if you want to use that, since it's fresh in our heads right now, you could use that as a guideline.
What does it mean, Yumi, when it says material changes shall begin and end at wall plane breaks and not occur in the same plane? So what if there's a giant wall? Can they change the material?
It would be challenging. I think that they would have to put in some sort of belly band or something to create a change. But typically what we want to see on like a vertical wall is some sort of jog back to show that to make the material look more authentic, rather than if you have a plane of wood siding and then you have a stone veneer right next to it, there's clearly some veneer.
Again, a cross-reference to a figure that would be difficult to find, and it's called out a couple times in this section, so it'd be nice to have figure 249 available here too. Yeah, 3 times at least in this section.
The only thing I want to point out is that there are examples of very high quality design that are monochromatic or mono material. I'm actually thinking of Edmund's Loft, I think, comes to mind, which I think this would meet still because there's change of material direction. But I think the 20% feels good. I think that's the minimum, right? They can always go up higher. I'd be concerned about requiring a higher number because I don't know what every wall looks like. And yeah, so I'm good with it as written.
Well, so if we go back to those gable ends from what we just saw on the Scout, this says materials shall begin and end at wall plane breaks and shall not occur on the same plane. That was one plane wall. So if they wanted to break it up with material, they couldn't do it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, per this standard, yes, they would not be able to just put on a different material.
And I don't think a belly band, the way that's written, would work either.
That's correct. But I would say that that's a project that's already been designed and hasn't had the opportunity to incorporate this.
Yeah, but just using an example for tomorrow, so we don't have an issue. So for me, that's probably the sentence that was too restrictive. That's probably where my notes come from.
I see, Mitch. I think you make a good point that sentence is, I think, well intentioned, but I'm worried that it actually would restrict us from making for higher quality design.
Just like you accidentally said, Yumi, you said a belly band, and then you're looking at it. Actually, that wouldn't work. So, and a belly band would be a normal place to do a break.
How do people feel about removing the material changes shall begin and end at wall plane breaks and shall not occur in the same plane clause?
I'd like to see it go.
1, 2, 3. I'm fine.
okay.
Good with that. All right. So we've got a majority for removing that sentence. Great. Anything else on material changes? That's it, right? Material variation. All right. Tahoe Donner plan area. I remember that Mitch said these words. I didn't know it.
So, and you know, I brought that up to Tahoe Donner, and they responded. If I remember correctly, staff, is that correct? I thought they were at one of the meetings, and I don't know if we ever got to it or not, but I thought they had said something about it. I don't even remember what it is anymore. So many months ago.
So there's a section in here. The kind of biggest part, right here, is the minimum density requirement in Tahoe Donner.
So this is just language that's elsewhere in our code that we're just reiterating that that's the minimum density that multifamily residential projects in Tahoe Donner are required to meet.
And my notes are, did we check with Tahoe Donner to see if the town of Truckee had the same allowance of units? Because usually not. Usually the town wants more than what Tahoe Donner allows on a particular lot. And so, in my opinion, if we're going to write new codes, they should be more in sync with each other. Which I think would lose DUEs for the town, so I don't know if that would work at all.
But wouldn't the town's code supersede Tahoe Donner's code requirements?
No, the stricter of the two.
Right.
I know guys that are trying to build multifamilies right now, and they're having issues. The town says you have to put 7, and Tahoe Donner says 4, and that's it. And nothing gets
such
built.
A convoluted way.
And nothing gets built.
But shouldn't the hierarchy be the town's code is the thing that defines what happens in Tahoe Donner, even if Tahoe Donner wants something else?
I think you're saying
So
politically you don't want to cave.
Well, no, I'm asking.
As a contractor for 40 years, the
And that doesn't
stricter
seem
of
like an
the
issue that
two
we can-
prevails. That's how we operate.
I think both commissioners are saying the right thing. I think it's correct. I think, yes, we plan based off of what our community wants, regardless of what the HOA standards are. But sometimes the HOA standards do impact what can actually be developed on the site.
There you have it.
So
we're going to set up codes here that don't agree with Tahoe Donner, and why even waste the ink?
So for this particular code amendment, it doesn't preclude. I mean, this section, this minimum density section, is elsewhere in our development code.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to do less than the required density, there is a pathway, less than 90%. You just have to do additional affordable housing. So if they want to use this deed restricted housing project, we're saying you need to meet the minimum density. But if you want to, you could potentially build something where you're saying 100% of the units have to be deed restricted, and potentially you could have a lesser density than what's currently identified here, the 90%, which is similar to what it is elsewhere in our code.
It just seems so convoluted. That's my objection to it.
And it's almost immaterial because what happens is nothing gets built, and then they end up selling the lot, and they're super pissed at the town usually. I get earfuls about it all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm just throwing it out there because
What would you suggest?
I would suggest that the numbers should coincide with what Tahoe Donner is maxing out at. Then everybody's in sync.
But this is only, just to clarify, this section is for compliance with this program.
And there's very few left Tahoe Donner multifamily or multi left anyway.
Well, I just want to clarify, the owner of a site can still build in Tahoe Donner on a multifamily site without going through this section of the code.
That's correct.
Yes.
So I would not amend this program to match Tahoe Donner standards. Maybe it's a different question.
It's fine. It won't happen. That's where you're at.
Then we won't get any deed restricted housing in Tahoe Donner.
They still could. They could go. They don't have to follow the chapter of the code to get the monetary incentives. They can do density bonus for all I care. There's all these other pathways. They just can't follow this one pathway.
How would they get density bonus if they're
State law? They get the state density bonus. That supersedes everyone.
The state supersedes everybody.
right? But I haven't seen that come into play in Tahoe Donner. I don't know how that's possible, but a lot of the lots are quite small, and therefore the state law, I mean, it wouldn't really allow, even if you put as much as you could on one lot, it wouldn't really, short of going way up, which we're saying you can't. So.
But state density bonus law says you can.
Yes.
I don't think there's enough housing, like sites left in Tahoe Donna to make it sort of like
it's a priority for developers.
Well,
who want to
multifamilies,
build there.
and they're worthless because nobody can build on them, so nobody's even looking at them.
Well, I almost feel like this is a bigger conversation than just for this program that may need to be dealt with.
Well, and it's funny because there's the number 7, and that's what I usually hear as a complaint. I'm like, I bought a 4-plex lot, and they tell me I have to put 7 units on it. But okay, that's all I got to say about it.
They don't have to try to get my,
just leave it and move on.
I would recommend that the town have conversations with Tahoe Donner.
I think that's what we're saying here is that this should be a more
Yeah,
coordinated development of this.
That was my point.
Item.
Did anyone check with Tahoe Donner? That's my first sentence about this. That's what it has.
And hence the reason the houses keep getting bigger in Tahoe Donner, but not multifamily. I mean, you could house multifamily, beg your pardon, but not multi-dwellings. It's themselves keep getting bigger rather than dividing lots up. So I think that is definitely a conversation I would recommend town leadership have with Tahoe Donner leadership and come back to us with we need your support. We want to change this. You can put whatever you want in here about Tahoe Donner. If they're not going to listen, then that's a tough one.
And just to end the conversation, it's not that Tahoe Donner doesn't listen. In order to change the CC&Rs in Tahoe Donner, you have to have 50% plus 1 of the people voting yes. In an election that 50% of the members vote. They've only had 50% of the members vote twice after spending gazillions of dollars to advertise it to make sure enough people would actually vote. That's why they haven't changed the citing rules that were written in 72. Because that's what they would have to do it. So that's where the issue is. Okay, I think we should close the conversation right there, call it done, and move on.
I think we'll move on. I wrote just down, outside of this program, interact with Tahoe Donner on harmonizing their density standards and the town's. Okay.
Thank you for bringing it up.
Timing of deed-restricted units. Anyone want to talk about this?
Well, we usually require that like inclusionary and workforce units be among the first ones built, do we not?
Yes, I mean, they're supposed to be built proportionate to the market rate.
Where does this occur in the code?
I thought we did also.
Anyone else? I hear 3 saying they thought we did. Carl doesn't remember. I know, Carl, you had a grammatical error. We did. So I think maybe both of these were circled back. I don't know if people had feelings, but So this is a incentive that they can request, correct? This is
Correct.
A tier 1 incentive, so they get up to 2, depending on their percentages.
And I actually...
It says tandem.
I know it does.
So tandem in our code is usually 2.
I know.
But here's, we propose some language based off of the confusion that my previous language provided. So I tried to clarify. So hopefully that will meet your needs. But I don't know if there was more of a content versus just a grammatical or clarifying comment. I think that is voluntarily covered.
It should say parking.
I'm good with it, but I defer to Coral.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Is voluntarily covered as passive, and you don't know who's doing the covering. But I guess at least I understand it now. Don't have a partially covered parking space, and deed-restricted units don't have to have a covered space. That's what this paragraph says. You could have said it just like that, but No, I'm okay with it. I think we just talked. Did we all?
We're all
Didn't
good
we feel
with
like
this.
it was okay to
Yeah.
excuse the need for a? Makes it more affordable.
Yeah,
Sure.
and to be clear, again, this is not for a project doesn't have to request this incentive. They can request other incentives instead. So I think we're all good with this.
Yeah, I don't know that we needed to circle back on the parking, the enclosures of the parking, although thanks for making the change there. It was more the quantity of parking.
But while we're there, actually, I did have a question about, if you go back to the chapter, Yumi, the item next to it, so parking fully enclosed, that's good. Parking tandem parking, which Mitch pointed out is called tandem.
That says stacking right next to it.
The stacking of no more. I'm fine. That is a great verb. I had a question for staff here. The dimensions of an unenclosed tandem parking space shall be a minimum of 40 feet in depth and 9 feet in width. Do we have tandem parking standards elsewhere in our code, and is this matching that?
Yes.
Okay, because I Googled it, and it can be between 36 feet deep and 40 feet. 9 feet wide seems to be pretty standard, but I was wondering why we went with 40 and not the more efficient 36 feet.
Well, the 40 feet is similar to our typical parking standard of 20 feet in depth for a parking stall.
Great. Okay.
Because we drive a lot of pickups and SUVs, and they're longer
then I Googled
than those cars.
I Googled how big. Probably not the right car. I Googled how big is a Rivian pickup. Probably not the right car for
No, there's a lot of them up here that work.
But for the type of product that we're envisioning.
For the product,
I have some suggested changes in this paragraph. Tandem parking. One, tandem parking is two. Tandem means two. So if this is more than two, then we should not use the word tandem. It's misleading.
I think it's only
But you
two.
could change this to say tandem
rear.
parking that results in up to two parking spaces, one behind the other. There's like 7 words that aren't even needed in it.
I think this current sentence is pretty clear to me, actually. Tandem parking that results in the stacking of no more than 2 parking spaces.
Tandem parking that results in up to 2 parking spaces. Why does it have to be of no more than? Why is no more than better than up to? Sorry, I get impatient with wordy legalese. There's no need to have all those words in there. Tandem parking that results in up to 2 parking spaces, comma. Then that takes out stacking.
Clear as mud, right?
Pretty much.
All right. I think 3 votes for that change, so we can move on. Anything else on parking before we get into, Coral does want to get into quantity of parking, but before we get to quantity, anything on these incentives? All right, seeing none, over to quantity of parking, which is in a totally different section. It's not an incentive. 46, 2-46, what is it? All right.
Did we last time say to keep the parking as standard as is?
We agreed with the staff draft, yes.
Well, then we don't need to revisit it, do we?
I think there was, we're here. I have no changes. I'm happy with it still. Anyone else?
My notes say not enough, but it's another sword I'm not going to die on.
All right. Okay, so this was a question I think Mitch, you threw in there at the very last minute, which was, does the deed restriction allow seniors, or, because we have a workforce requirement, I think, that could be, discriminatory and harm our seniors. So maybe language to clarify that.
I think I would like to see seniors be eligible for to live in deed restricted housing in this town. Then the income doesn't make so much sense because seniors usually have a different type of income and income flow than working people.
Okay. So at my last presentation in November, it wasn't in your actual staff report. It wasn't in the language in the development code, but it is something that we identified, tagged that we would need to change and include. And I think all of our programs are something that we're all looking at, including all the programs Lynn is working on down there. I think this is something we'll be looking at globally on all our programs.
Seniors and disabilities, what I saw, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was in our housing element draft last month as well, right? Is to look at this, so that's good. Okay, so just to confirm, so I'm on page 7-38, which has deed restricted housing eligibility requirements, and that's where there is one member of the household is required to be concurrently employed 30 hours or more per week. So that's an example of where we're restricting retirees, and we're going to find a way to, I think for people who are of working age, that's a good requirement, but are we still but we want to not restrict seniors with that clause by accident.
Right.
Okay. Got it. All good? All right. So that's number 11. Let's go backwards to number 8, historic design standards. So as we jump into this, I want to ask a question of Danielle. Is this the first time we're adopting objective design standards for a historic district?
Yeah.
Okay.
There is one for ADUs right now.
Yeah, that's
on
the only
historic resources.
Thank you, Yumi. Okay, so that's exciting. But it also means that we kind of have to, I think, just make sure we do our homework here and read it closely and really think through it, because we're able to draw, there are obviously design guidelines elsewhere in the code, but this is the first time we're really applying them to the historic district, and so we don't have as many other precedents to draw from. So I just wanted to point that out to myself and other commissioners. So. And
I do want to preface this that we are working on a more robust process coming up sooner rather than later, to do the first phase, likely in our downtown Truckee plan design guidelines could be changed in part to standards, which will also come forward to you after HPAC looks at it.
Great. Thank you. Wonderful. Where are we? What page are we on?
4-31, Historic Design Review, Chapter 18.77.
Thank you, Mitch.
Nope. Yumi's on a different page, 2-150.
Is there another section that you were looking at?
I think he was looking at the process. I think he was looking at review.
I was.
Yumi, if I recall correctly, we did not at all discuss this last time, right?
That's correct.
Yumi, would you share with us kind of where you drew these from, how you put these together? I know it was a long time ago, so.
A lot of them was when I went through the historic design guidelines and highlighted the ones that were already standards, and then also ones that seem to be the most important for what we've looked at in past projects, and what we've called upon to provide direction to projects. So it is based in our historic design guidelines. There are some areas where we had to create objective standards where you may find them a little arbitrary in the fact that I have to come up with a number to consider. Particularly, I brought up at the November presentation the front setback, the size of the project in terms of the historic resource compared to the new addition, and then the sizes of new construction in relation to other historic resources in the nearby area. So those were the 3 areas I thought was of most interest to the Planning Commission to talk about, but obviously everything is of interest and up for discussion by the Planning Commission.
Thank you. All right, I guess we're going to go through this page by page. And I know Mitch had a lot of feelings about it last time, so.
I got a bunch. I got notes on every page.
Okay. Well, we're starting with A1 material.
And yes, one other question. How kind of aligned are these with the other historic design guidelines that are going to come to us soon-ish?
They are really aligned because they would start here.
Okay,
They haven't
I just want to
been
make sure
drafted
that,
yet.
like, if we're going to put an effort going through this line by line, that it will also be applicable when we have the discussion around the other ones. Okay, great.
And that's why I think it's important for us to take our time here, because it kind of does become the new precedent. Yeah. All right, A1, materials.
Mike, please.
Oh. So B, corrugated metal or rolled steel siding shall only be used on non-historic accessory structures. Why is that?
Because they are not a historic material that was identified in our design guidelines.
So the MacGyver dairy, that's what it has as a roof.
Sure. I mean, there are instances where corrugated metal can be seen in our historic downtown, but well, the MacGyver dairy, I'd say, is not in our historic downtown, and our historic design guidelines were the governing for the majority. And the idea is that potentially you could allow for corrugated metal in some areas, in the character areas, but we are not going to the detail of going through each character area as part of this this part of the
I
development
agree.
project.
That's why I didn't understand why it's even there. So it's not part of what?
The character, the MacGyver dairy, it's
No, corrugated steel isn't listed in
historic design guidelines. I don't believe it's a identified material that's encouraged.
Can I just understand what this is saying? This is saying that a new structure in the district can have some metal.
So new construction, new accessory
Yeah,
structures
okay.
can use
Can
it.
have some
So let's
metal.
go backwards then.
Yeah.
The garage shed that I had in front of Blue Sky is in the district, was built in 1917 and has a corrugated roof. So I don't understand why it's there. It was a super popular component back in the day. I don't know who would say it's not. It was either wooden, the only material that makes things look old.
Okay, well that's up
That's
to
my opinion.
discussion with the planning commission.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Yumi's trying to get at is there's context, and because of the way that we do our assessments for our historic buildings, there's sort of a series of things we're looking at, like the context of the individual building and the character area, if it's associated with a person or place of significance, and then the materials on the building, the architectural style. So there's sort of this series of things where if you had a house on East River Street that had lap siding, and we know that because we can see it underneath the 5 layers of siding that we all know are there, you probably wouldn't, as a historic restoration opportunity, say, yeah, put corrugated metal on that when you have that sort of history of the wood being on there. And I think that's what she's getting at. What you're getting at is, well, I've worked on projects and I see projects out there that have that, like the Tin Can building on Jaboom, which is now a coffee bar. I mean, that's pretty much all corrugated metal.
Yep.
But most of that was repurposed from its original project. And so, yes, in some cases, if that is truly its historic character, there's no issue with reusing that or repairing it or replacing it. I think what Yumi's trying to explain is that it becomes out of character if you start adding a material that wasn't part of that original character of that building, especially if you're going for a restoration
And
opportunity.
there's another piece. I think everything we're talking about is a roof, and this is specifically calling out siding.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we're not seeing a lot of people put like corrugated roofing material on anything really right now. Maybe some, just
I just
plain
get
metal,
concerned that we get super restrictive. Then, because when we become super restrictive, then everything starts to look the same, and we lose our character. So that's always my concern. But that's it, commissioners. If you want to leave it in, go for it, and we can move on to the next sentence.
I don't really have a preference on this one, but I think what you just said is actually starting to really resonate, is like, as we are getting more restrictive, and I know these are objective design standards and they have to be objective, but even today, the 2 buildings that we looked at looked remarkably similar. Like the time extension and the hotel are now looking same color scheme, same, I don't remember what the materials are on the senior apartments, but same roof line, like we're seeing the same building.
I don't think sameness is actually a bad thing. In preparation for this, I was pulling up old historic photos of Truckee, which is a fun little side activity. And I'll send it around. There's a photo of of Truckee, and it's literally every building is the same size, same roof, same shape, same color. That was affordable back then, right? And that's how they built it. So I don't think sameness inherently is wrong. I think you're still pointing out something. I think the challenge is, we've had for a long time an HPAC process, right, which is meant to be individualized, personalized, kind of extremely deep on the context of each site. We've also heard feedback that can be a challenging process. And so having objective design standards is a way to protect the interests of the town while being clear to developers. But because it's no longer a personalized process, it has to be standard. So
yeah, I mean, I think and it's hard because these are historic objective design standards, which is very different than just regular objectives. I mean, people still don't have to use these objective standards, right? Like if they wanted to go through the longer review process, they could, and then have that more personal review. I think, what I'm more referring to is like new design and development. I think historic is a little bit different, but I'm seeing similar designs for new construction. I think historic would remain historic if possible. We were, construction standards and abilities were much more limited back then. And now we have all this potential to be creative. So I don't want to squash that creativity, which maybe doesn't apply to this conversation about objective design standards. But just, Mitch, thank you for bringing that up, because I think that's something that we should all be cognizant of as we review projects in the future.
Right. Thank you.
Can I just ask, still on it's our A1B here. Yumi, was your intent for the metal to be prohibited on all surfaces or just siding?
Siding.
Just siding. I think it's kind of saying that. I guess corrugated metal or rolled steel siding. Yeah, it says that. So
yeah. That's why I'm just correcting myself, because all my examples were
roofing. I guess when I read it, I thought corrugated metal was separate from rolled steel siding. Like I thought these were two, that I would and see that.
We can clarify. We can add another siding in there.
Yeah, maybe that would just make it really clear for future readers like myself that this is about siding. I'm not gonna have a fight about the roofing later. How do people feel about the fiber cement prohibition? I love it. I don't know.
I still don't understand why fiber cement we're trying to prohibit, but Trex is allowed. I will never understand how Trex, after the discussion we just had 10 seconds ago, is allowed in the historic district, period.
It's less visible from the street.
As a decking material? Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Really? 1882? Yeah. You can't tell that that's Trex going by at 40 miles an hour? I can.
I mean, no, I can't. But now I'll be watching for it.
I've never noticed it. As a standard, as a commission, we have generally viewed the surfaces you walk on with a lot less scrutiny for that reason that Coral just gave. So, all right.
I mean, if you hate Trex so much, we could recommend an addition to prohibit it in these objective design standards for historic structures or historic districts.
I would love that. I don't think it belongs.
I mean, some of this is based on our years and years of working with HPAC, and there are many, many reviews of projects where they have just grappled with all of these issues over and over again. And so Trex was one for a long time where they were resistant because it's not an authentic material, but it became a functional need for certain projects to kind of preserve the historic house, and they made an exception for that. So I think that's, just part of our evolution in looking at these guidelines, that we were taking some of that history and bringing it forward too. And yeah, part of their justification was it's not as visible, and it's something that changes out over time.
Yeah, I'm okay with it as written. I don't see the need to add. Going back to A1 materials, maybe you should say siding materials, since these are all siding requirements. No? They are, right? Just making sure. Okay, cool.
So you'll change it to siding materials? That's a great idea.
I think that would really clarify that we're only talking about siding here. All right, 2, architectural features. 2A, windows.
We've made this recommendation in the past, I remember, the 2-to-1 ratio.
Yeah, we did.
I'll say 1. The 2-to-1 ratio I think is good. I don't have an issue with that. the second one, only rectangular windows. So in my goofing off looking at old photos, there are non-rectangular windows.
Octagonal for sure.
Octagonal. There's arched
there's Palladian windows in some places.
Semicircle. The McGlashan house is basically all windows, and they're all like arched French. They're crazy. But so I guess having said all that, Yumi, tell me why you think, is this something that HPAC really feels strongly about? Where does the rectangular requirement come from? It's just so hard to write objective standards. I know it's the problem.
I believe that these, you're testing my memory, but I think that they came out of the objective design standards, which is just, I also based some of this off of the actual objective design standards and trying to make sure that they aligned somewhat. I could pull up the historic design guidelines to see also if that is actually guidelines in our historic design guidelines.
Yeah, and windows have definitely been a huge discussion topic, even with historic buildings, because if someone's, going in and doing a rehab project and they realize that there's a different opening in a wall that they didn't know before, and so then there's a discussion about, well, was that an original window opening? What was it? Can we replace it? And there was a phase that the whole town went through where the big picture windows in the front came into play, which were not original. They used to be two kind of side-by-side windows, but that was like a fad that we went to. So that's like people want to replace the picture window back to the original ones. So windows are just such a big part of what our identity is and in the styling of them that I think, that's carried over for sure with these objective design standards, because what we've seen when people start applying really, really modern designs, you get just these like really large plate glass windows that are floor to ceiling, and it's just not something that sort of goes with our environment, our character downtown. It's just sort of that weird juxtaposition between our historic and new. So I think this was a kind of evolution of discussion about how do you create that compatibility with new buildings with our historic pattern.
I think it's also trying to take the more conservative approach. Sometimes when an octagonal or a circular window or an arched window goes into it, you're like, that's not quite the right location, to me using a rectangular as a more conservative approach for these objective design standards rather than, and if they wanted to make the argument that this architecture benefits greatly from an octagonal window, then I guess a flexible design review process would be the appropriate pathway.
I mean, it's funny because probably in 10 years from now, we're going to look at these design standards and say these are ridiculous. We need to change them. I mean, I think about a lot of the Tahoe Tunnel designs where everyone was doing the triangle windows to match like the peak of the roof. And I've seen a lot of projects come forward where they're removing those and going back to a square design instead of a triangle design because they just don't like the aesthetic of it. So we're doing our best to create something that we know will change over time. But there's sort of, the evolution of taste in architecture that you can see. I mean, we went through the, red window phase and then the blue window phase and the triangle window phase. I mean, everything sort of changes over time. So I think even if we create something, we have to acknowledge, we will probably change it at some point too. This is not forever.
Yes, we used to love gambrel roofs everywhere.
Yes. I mean, I'm fine leaving this in here as is, as part of the objective design standard, and then having that flexible design review where they can talk about how these windows are context sensitive if they propose them. So
objective can be simple,
yeah.
And if you wanted to go outside the objective, you have the option for flexible review.
And that's kind of what we have to remember because we're looking at objective, not overall.
Yeah, so I'm good with that. Thank you. Thank you for that history too, Danielle. It's super helpful to remember that. Anything else on Windows?
Yeah.
Amy.
So you have kind of proportions in section 1. So rather than only rectangular windows, because it sounds like the size is a problem too. And we all encountered that in a recent discussion where they were rectangular, but they were also the size of a 5-story building. Or I'm exaggerating, but so maybe it's more of a approximate square footage, square meterage, something, and it would. Pardon?
Number 4 has a limit to 30% of the area of each wall.
Yeah, well.
Which I think is kind of high.
That's high, yeah.
I'm okay with it as written.
I think I was going to get to that one as maybe less concern about. Maybe that's the standard for historic buildings is about 30%, so that's okay. But if you want each individual window to be less than a certain size, then just say what that size is. And then if somebody wants a bunch of circular, round windows, great. Well, they can't be bigger than 3 square feet or however. Geometry is failing me at the moment.
Can I restate what I think you're pointing out?
Sure.
Someone could propose, here's a facade. I'm going to make a really tall window that's 2 stories tall. That's no more than 30% of the facade. We all, that would meet would meet the 2-to-1 ratio, would meet the 30% max, and it would meet the rectangular shape, but it would be obviously not historic. So what you're pointing out is there's something else missing about some kind of max size on a window.
And remember, we're also we're not speaking about an individual house. Now we're talking about a multi-unit building where, I don't know, maybe I'm not really up on window costs, but a lot of octagonal windows probably wouldn't make sense in a building that you're trying to keep costs down. And Mitch, you can tell me that I'm completely wrong.
They don't. No, you're completely right, because they're not popular any longer, so they don't make them.
But I think, because maybe someday there'll be like a,
they're going to come
parallelogram
back
windows. I don't know, but at least you want a size that you're.
Okay.
I've seen people do some crazy things, so maybe that's the thing is size, and then that whole no more than 30%, so you don't get wall a window.
I think we're not going to be able to find the exact language tonight, but I think your point is right, Amy, that someone could loophole their way through this and make a 3-story tall window.
Write that in. No 2-story windows.
I'm pretty sure they're unlikely to try that in the historic district. Although there was some very interesting things attempted recently for the historic
exactly.
district.
I can
think I'm allowed to talk about it now.
A stairwell that,
That's what I worry. Is someone who's putting a big stairwell
window in a stairwell.
Yeah.
But also that may be, I don't know. But that's what I can think of.
And are in 3? Is that Coral? You're not objecting to the spelling? Divided lights?
No, I think I usually see it that way. But no, just because you usually see something doesn't mean it's correct. Like, should I put together a sentence of all kinds of things we normally hear that are horrible?
No, I think this is the right spelling.
Lights?
Yeah, for the panes.
I see. Okay. Just checking.
But thanks, Amy.
Okay. Anything else on windows?
Do we need to clarify number 4? Do we need to change the wording? You're going to change so that they can't build a 3-story window?
I think I'm comfortable with everything as written. I think I kind of leave it to staff to kind of come up with a clever way to prevent that. Yeah.
Yumi says, make my day.
Okay, doors. I'm hearing doors are fine. All right. Roofs.
I just had an issue with cutaway scalloped edge roof tiles are prohibited. Those are pretty much Victorian, and I looked this up. CertainTeed actually calls them carriage house. They want you to. They're emulating old school. And that's what I got on my house. It looks historic. That's why I did it. Sam.
What exactly are you pointing at, Mitch?
A roof. 2A, composition shingle with uniform shingle shapes, cutaway corners, scalloped edge, and other irregular shapes.
Okay. Yeah, I think this kind of. How common are these irregular shapes?
They're not that common, but they emulate old school. That's why CertainTeed calls them carriage house, because they're old. And when you look up scalloped roofing on the internet, it relates to Victorian style houses, which is historic.
Which there, in the river area district, I actually I'm going to go look. I have a recent set of photos where we walked the entire river area district and took photos. So, but I feel like the cutaway corners do occur in parts of the historic district on historic structures. Unless I don't know what a cutaway corner is.
I think, something we kind of just said a minute ago. Were we all like Googling things on my computer? Cutaway corner. Something we just said a minute ago, which resonated with me, is that these, someone can go through flexible design review, and that this is meant to provide a path for objective design review. And I was thinking more about our historic, how Truckee developed, and 80-90% of the homes in Truckee were built cheap, right? They were built quick, easy. They're boxes with roofs, right?
And then they burned down.
Yes. But then, 20% of the homes were built expensive, right? The house up on the hill that was like all glass, right? And
McGlashan's was the White House.
The White House. I think what we're trying to do here is create a pathway for this simple structure, and not create a standard for every creative thing that someone could do. Because if they want to do that, that's great, and we welcome it, and it goes through flexible design review. But I think that we focus this on what is kind of the basic essence of the most quintessential historic structure, which I think is a simple box with a gable roof. Pretty much. Okay.
I like simplicity in this chapter.
Are we okay to move to decks, or do people have more to say on roofs?
I wanted to point out that corrugated metal roofs are allowed here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Now I can sleep good tonight.
All right. Decks, balconies, and patios. Railings may be wood or steel, glass, plastic, or plexi. Not prohibited, allowed.
So crusher screen, just to be clear, isn't that what they usually screed rocks with?
Yeah, it's typically the metal grids that we see.
It's hog wire.
Hog rail.
Yeah.
Mhm. I don't have any problems with these.
Are you saying it should be allowed, Mitch?
No, I just wanted to make sure what it was, because I have notes that says hog wire next to it. I just want to make sure that's what it is. And it should be allowed. It should not.
Okay, great.
That's a timestamp of
Yeah.
the most immediate yesterday there is.
Got it. Anything else? So, right, site features.
Site features. Site features B. Where does the front yard start or end?
I think it's anywhere that's in the front of the property, in front of the building.
That's like looking up the word in the dictionary and it gives you the word as the definition.
I think between the building and the right of way.
Yeah, because usually you do 4 foot, then as you get into the next to the house, and you go up to 6 feet, right? So is that kind of what we're trying to say here?
It'd be that front one, the one that's along the right of way. The one that's on the side between properties would be allowed to potentially be up to 6 feet, similar to the rest of our single-family residential. But there are guidelines that are pretty strict about how big the front fence should be.
Yeah,
in the historic
most
district.
places in America have that. 4 foot in the front and 6 foot everywhere else. 8 foot if you're bordering commercial property. So usually the front is to the front of the house, and then you can go to 6 feet from the front of the house back. I don't know if we should be a little bit more clear about that, just so applicants would understand it. That's it.
You could just refer to the general setback guidelines and what's allowed in it.
Yeah.
I think he's being a little more clear,
You're trying to specify,
specific that the side fence between the front of the building and the right of way should also be 4 feet, which is not what our current standards say.
Yeah, it should be, right? 4 feet in the whole front yard, and then it would go up after you hit the side of the house, or right before it, 2 feet before it as you modulate up too.
I agree with that addition. And again, I'm trying to remember that we want to believe everyone's going to act in good faith, but not everyone is. So.
Most 80% of the people do the right thing.
80%?
20% do not.
Yeah.
They just are so egregious that they ruin it for the other 80%.
Right. I agree. That matches my experience up here.
That's my experience everywhere.
So yes, let's add in clarifying language about front yard.
Yeah. Okay, exterior lighting.
This makes sense to me. There's a extra hyphen in C.
Right after toward, right? I got that circled also.
All right, modifications to exist. Okay, so that was everything that applies to all structures.
I just added,
Yeah.
Now, modification of existing structure.
Okay, so the next section is changes to a historic structure category A, B, or C. I just want to point that out because that changes things.
I just wrote on A on the top of the page there, when applicable at the end. Because there might not be a historic resource.
New modifications are changed.
Yeah, especially if it's a shed in the back of the lot.
Well, if it's a shed in the back of the lot, then it would have a historic structure in the front. Oh, if the historic structure is the shed and there's a new house in front of it?
I looked at a lot that had a Class A falling down piece of shed in the back corner of it, and the rest of the lot was free. I mean, that's another discussion we talked about having, is what's really worth keeping. But yeah, and it had a shed in the back, and you would put the house in front of it, and it would be new. So there's the example.
Sorry, what section are we concerned about here? Where are we exactly? B1A. We skipped. Okay, but it says in the section, the clause before it says existing historic structure shall be the larger site unless the historic resource is considered an accessory structure. So is that modifying A or not?
I don't understand your question.
Well, I'm pointing out that B1 points out that this requirement only applies, I guess it's saying that's talking about size.
Yeah, this is location. So I own a piece of property that's 38 feet wide. It's got a house all the way on the back setback. The front is completely open. So if somebody was to build something there, this wouldn't be applicable. That was all I was thinking.
It's a house that's set really far back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 1A precludes building a new building on that lot I was looking at.
No, unless, I think maybe the intent here is to clarify unless the structure is an accessory structure. Coral.
No, we got a very broad statement. New modifications or changes to the site shall be located behind the existing historic resource. On my particular lot, and there's other ones out there, you can't do that.
Just not create an exception for accessory structures.
I think I was contemplating how accessory structures would fall into this. I think we could clarify if you want to have a similar language as it does above. But I don't think the first one is very much about larger, not about location, which is interesting because it's under location.
Yeah, maybe there's a structural thing there.
Yeah, so we could talk about how to reformat that to make it make sense. And if you wanted to consider accessory structures, we can include language. Or if you want it to be more discretionary when a vacant property or mostly vacant property with a historic structure is proposing a multifamily, do we want to kind of forego the historic design standards and try to get them to go down a different path?
It's kind of like the rock in the hotel that we looked at 2 meetings ago, right? That was a historic rock, and they're pretty much hiding it, and they're not even giving access to it. So, kind of the same thing.
So are people okay with this kind of broad, knowing that it's going to prevent certain types of development on a certain number of sites? But
yeah.
Okay, cool. So move on.
And I forget that it's multifamily too, so yeah. I'm sorry.
You mean maybe either location is not the right word, or it's like siting really is the word. Maybe, I don't know. I'll leave that up to you. Floor area.
So if there's a small house on a site, but it's a large site that could accommodate a multifamily dwelling, you can't do it because the modification has to be smaller than the house.
But you can't do it only on objective design guidelines. You can still do it on a flexible, correct? Yes. So half my notes just got wiped.
Well,
I see.
I just want to point out, though, I know this chapter is just multifamily, but very soon someone will be hitting copy paste into a new chapter that might be applying to more than just multifamily. So, if we are highlighting issues, it's not bad to solve them now.
Okay. Well, then if that's the case, 25% seems a little small to me, but
I'm okay with it. So it's like someone's adding a bonus room. It shouldn't really be done that in the first place. I mean, people have done things right, like lifted up and added downstairs. I think something like that.
They just did that downtown.
They just did that downtown. I think that.
Margins, right?
I mean, I think what's hard about these, sorry to interrupt, but these particular existing historic resources there aren't that many, and those sites might not even be zoned for multifamily. So I think these are very specific instances that would preclude someone from using these objective design standards.
I think the section should be pretty tight because these are our actual historic resources.
Well, then, like I said, that gets rid of half my notes.
Height. Yeah. Good with that.
I'm okay.
What is differentiation? The design of an attached addition shall be distinguishable. Okay, so basically saying if you're going to do an addition, it needs to look like it was new. Is that what HPAC has required in the past? How many times have people done additions? A fair number of times.
Yeah.
Oh boy, there's a lot. Yeah. At least the neighborhood I studied. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. You're
A lot
right.
of-
You're right. The extra garage.
All kinds of
Yeah.
mishmash of stuff.
So HPAC likes them to be distinguishably different. Okay, cool.
Maintains the integrity of the original structure.
All right, materials again on existing historic resources.
So in A1, the poor community development director has to go out there and stare at the side of the house and go, yep, that's deteriorated, and you can't send one of your staff?
She's the decision maker, but
I'm teasing, but it's just funny.
I do enjoy it. I mean, I do go out.
Oh,
does go
that's
out
good.
and does a lot of site visits.
I think this is written because I know there have been cases where people are making changes to historic structures. They say it's too deteriorated, and there's a disagreement. So I think it's good to have clarity on who's the decider and what the standard is.
I agree. The way it's written is funny.
Danielle, in the case where something is truly extremely deteriorated, more than 50%, how would you solve that?
Usually we come up with a plan with the contractor. So when we're on site, we're going through and looking at kind of test sections of whatever the issue is. And then most of the time they're finding an equivalent replacement to repair and patch if they can. I have had situations where all the siding was deteriorated. And then what they did is pulled some off and then figured out if they could buy the equivalent, because sometimes the relief is different. It's either a V-groove or they have different kind of cuts in the siding, so they'll try and replicate that. So we just make sure we're on the same page.
Cool. Thank you.
You could always custom mill anything.
We have had a lot of that. There's been some on High Street and East River where we've had some custom siding done. But
Blue Sky was done too.
Yeah, actually in Jaboob too. I've had quite a few. But it's usually the contractor that's showing, like, here's what I'm replacing it with the new one, and I'm able to look at them side by side. We often have those materials in this office for that reason.
Cool. Right. I think this section looks good to me. Anyone else? All right. New attached additions to historic. So we're kind of going back to this concept again. Oh, so this is about the siding on new attachments. Got it.
And C, B or C are we on?
B, and then C is detached additions to historic. Talking about the siding.
Running bond pattern. That's where the things. Is that where the things? Okay.
So normally we would say your siding needs to match the context of your site because this is objective standards. We can't really say that. Is that the problem here? So we're trying to come up with like baseline.
We use a lot of compatible, but that's.
Do we need to say, when you say stone, you just mean stone. You don't mean veneer. You mean stone, right?
That's correct. I mean, typically the stone is also not a large boulder, but they are real stone.
I guess the concern I have with this, just structurally, is we have the whole section up at the top about siding, and then we're kind of creating like a new set of siding standards.
Additions versus.
I know, I'm just worried it's confusing. Even the next section, new detached additions. In addition to the siding material allowed under section 1825-101B5, is that the line above or dash A? Is that the section above, or is that the part we did at the very beginning? That's there.
It's A here.
That's 5A, right?
In addition to that, new detached additions to historic resources are also allowed. Oh, wait.
So, are we on C yet? You want to talk about board and batten?
Sure.
All right. So historically, board and batten was the wall, right? The boards were the wall, and then you use the battens to hide the seams and keep it weatherproof. So they were usually using 12-inch, 16-inch boards. You've got 6 or 8-inch boards here listed. So if you had a 4-inch batten on a 6-inch board, you have very little board. I think you really should be 8 to 12 inches. Rid of 6. That's just very small. Even 8's pretty small. And at least if you did 12 inches on center, then they could build a house or their structure on 12-inch centers with studs, so they have something to nail to. As in 6 inches, they don't have anything to nail, so they have to do runners through the whole thing.
And it's just to repeat that, you said 8 to 12-inch boards and 2 to 4-inch battens. Is that what you said? Okay.
I think staff understood me if the rest of you didn't.
No, I didn't. My question, going back to staff, the very beginning section, we had all these standards on appropriate siding. We said board and batten is appropriate. We didn't define the size of the board and batten. And my question is, should we? Up there on all projects.
So on a new house right now, if you were to do a simulated board and batten, you're using 4x8 sheets of plywood, and then you're going to do 1x4s on 16-inch centers because that's where the studs are. Right? That's you got something to nail to, and you're hiding the nails in the plywood. That's the normal today way to do it. So if you're trying to emulate, then most of the time, like in Tahoe Donner, I'll bring it up again, you can't have plywood on the side on the front of a house. So if you were to do board and batten, they're usually using 12-inch, building the front of the house on 12, so that they have something to nail. So they use 12-inch boards or 1x4. It's just a construction technique. So just to kind of match that and still get the look that you're looking.
I guess I'm just saying at the very beginning of this chapter, we said board and batten is an approved siding, but we didn't define.
There is some parameters where wood siding is used. The board shall be 4 to 6 inches wide. So maybe
we said that at the start?
That's in the
A1?
A1 siding materials. So maybe we need to
update that
so I didn't notice
to
it,
be consistent.
Yeah, it should be consistent all the way through, and at least 8-inch, but most Most people would probably use the 12 because of the construction tech.
So it'd be 8 to 12 inch boards.
Yeah, that's it.
And the battens are fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Mitch. Can we just go back? So sorry, new detached. I think this way this is written, I feel like Coral right now. Maybe I'm really confused.
All right, because I got a comment on number 2.
On C, new detached additions, in addition to the siding material allowed under section 1825-105B5A, but that's not including the section right above it. It's not including B. So technically, they would not be allowed to do horizontal wood lap or clapboard siding. They would not be allowed to do brick in a running bond pattern or stone for a wainscot.
That's correct.
So I think, don't we mean to allow those or no? Am I mistaken? For an addition.
Yeah, the problem really is with the
reference.
We want to make sure the cross-reference is right.
I think the reference is wrong. Is that the problem?
Why would you break up attached and detached? How's that for a question?
That's a fair question.
Yumi?
Well, the attached is actually touching the historic resource,
Right.
and the detached is not. And so maintaining the integrity of the historic resource as a structure seemed more important than having it if you wanted a detached.
So using that logic, which makes sense, then that's the reason different sidings are allowed in one and not the other.
I just am saying that C needs to make the right reference, or else it's actually it's technically it says only board and batten is allowed, not wood siding.
So you want that to read A and B,
I think so, right? Unless
so that it's allowed to use
everything
what's in
was,
A and in B and
yeah,
in
B
C.
1 through 3 and C 1 through 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's
And
a
then so
detached
more
can
for
use-
detached
yes.
than attached. But attached, okay. Yeah, that
Yeah.
works. So powder coated isn't really historic, so not sure if it should be there or not, but
That's.
I mean, it
I'm
does.
guessing that's just. I'm sorry, Mitch.
Go ahead.
But I mean, it's what's available that's going to meet dark sky.
So for this, I think it's just because it's a detached addition, not an attached addition, and there's maybe we could treat it
Would have
a
been
little
more
closer
lenient.
to like new construction as opposed to.
Okay. Because it's the same with the windows, vinyl or synthetic, right? They're prohibited. Oh, vinyl and synthetic windows are prohibited, but powder coating's okay. Oh, but it's on historic. Never mind. It's on historic resources.
Yeah. Detached additions to historic resources. Wood windows and aluminum clad windows are
That's fine.
recommended. Vinyl and synthetic. Yep. All right. Keep going. Can you scroll down, Yumi? I know you're taking notes. All right. C. New construction. The non-historic and new construction, new sites in the historic district. This is the one that we have reviewed a project of this type before.
Did we review this under the staff report comments in November? I have notes that
Yes.
says we commented on in the staff report on this whole page. Each one.
Yes, this is identified specifically for your, since it seemed more significant for you to consider. And this is related to a recent project, but it's not, that's a single family home. This is multifamily, but like you said, it could potentially have impacts.
What are your notes, Mitch?
That we commented on the staff report. Maybe not. But that, I mean, again, this was November.
The note I had for myself.
Sorry, new construction of or modifications to non-historic. Please insert of, unless that doesn't make sense.
A concern I had was the standard for all of this was 120% of the median. If the median, let's say the range of FAR is, make it up guys, like 0.5 to 0.7. Okay, the median's 0.6. It's like, fine, whatever. But if the range is really wide, and you force us to go off the median, could end up, basically making like very average. I don't know. I guess you can always use flexible design standards, but I was worried that going off the median say I'm just going to use square footage. Let's say the median size is 1,500 square feet, but the largest building is twice that. Your historic structure, but that doesn't matter in this case because you're going off 120% off the median. So it's like you're kind of stuck at the median. But I guess in this case, they always have flexible design review.
They do, and I also feel like that could be just a one-off outlier, which is why the median is the safer choice.
I agree. Median's fine.
All right. Site design.
That's all I had for historic.
That's all you had.
About anybody else?
One just kind of general comment on these is like it might be helpful to add some kind of diagrams like we did in the other ODS, just so we can kind of visualize what these setbacks might look like, or like some of the scale and options that we have. But that's just, or maybe that'll come in the next iteration when we look at stuff.
Yeah, it might come in the next iteration, or we can work on it and then incorporate them later.
All right, I think we're done.
I like that suggestion.
Sorry. I think we are done.
I don't, except that I think we're going to get a lot of density, and there's going to be a lot of objection. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it. And maybe is the dwelling unit equivalents, Yumi, are these standard? Kind of, sort of. I haven't studied planning for a long time. But
They're pretty unique, I feel like. I don't think we have it in our code, and it applies to a lot of other areas. A lot of areas in our town where we allow multifamily, but I haven't seen it elsewhere. For a long time, historically in Truckee, we've had developers not build to density, and that has changed. And we were trying to incentivize more density in places in our community to avoid like lower density development. Now we're seeing some challenges with DUEs in other places in our community because then they double dip with the dwelling unit equivalent plus the state density bonus, and that causes obviously a lot of density that our community might not be prepared for. So it is a unique thing that I believe.
so do we have to specify, or is that state law? Can we specify you got to pick one bonus? You don't get two or three. You don't get to keep going back to the pool.
Four-story projects, and there's a lot of land. We can build enough housing. There's a lot of sites. So I think the 25% is more than enough to achieve the goal for what we want. I do hear you, Sammy, that people might just choose the state density bonus in exchange as an alternative, right? And what I talked actually with Yumi about was I'd love for when we forward this recommendation to council that we attach to it a recommendation that council review this program between 2 and 3 years from now and actually see how many projects came through. Now, if what Paradigm 8 said is, hey, we're rearing to go, we're about to apply under this program, like that's awesome, and I hope that keeps happening. But if we get 0, then that tells us something is wrong, right? And the point I was going to make about if you do need DUEs, you go plan development. You go outside this program, you do your plan development, you do whatever it is. Because for now, it is still in the code. Although I respect staff's concern about that.
How many 100% of deed restricted projects do we typically see?
I mean, in the last planning period for the housing element, we've had more than typical, I think, with the Artist Lofts, Frishman Hollow 2, Coldstream Commons, and now Pacific Crest Commons. And then before that, we had Frishman 1 and Hennis Flats, and for a community of our size, it's a decent amount.
Even the Rayleigh's Soaring Ranch Phase 2 or 3 or whatever they call it would qualify on this one.
I feel like this program should make it as attractive as we can reasonably make it for people to bring in projects. And I think you made some really good points about 25%, and I'm in favor of simplicity as well. But if this makes it more attractive, it can happen sooner. The development can happen sooner. We'll get the
Meanwhile,
housing
we've been
sooner.
talking about things that, if they don't. I'm with Jason. I think the simple 25%, and you have to think of the existing community and the neighbors when they think they're next to an 18-unit development, and all of a sudden it comes in at 22. But what if it came in at 36?
Plus 36 parking spots.
But aren't we seeing that with some projects? Like I know we've reviewed projects that are using dwelling unit equivalents and getting density bonuses.
Yes, we have seen it. Does that make it right?
No. But I'm also saying it's not, I don't think right or wrong is the right answer, but
Fair?
No. I mean, expectations are unique to individuals, and we can't manage everyone's expectations.
I get that.
But I hear what you're saying. And the 4-story thing, I think this community is drawing a line at 3 stories as acceptable. 4 stories is pushing it. And I think that's a very perceptive observation. And if we want... Go ahead.
Sorry. It does depend on location for the objection to the 3 or 4 stories. We have also witnessed some very unattractive NIMBYism in this room.
Yes, I don't want to deny that either. That is certainly true.
And unattractive is the nicest thing I can say about it.
I think when I was looking, let's just really make it clear. I thought this example was really nice. Thank you, Yumi. So 18 unit an acre. Now, what kind of zoning is that? Is that high density or is that our medium? That's our
high.
That's our max on the high density?
No, we go up to 24 in town.
Okay. What's our max on our medium?
I think it goes to 15.
Okay. So 18 an acre, you get 25% bonus. That gets you 22. If we do the DUE with a 40% studio max, which I think is what we would have to do, you get 28 units on that same parcel. The problem is that you've not just added more units, you have to add more parking now. You have to add more laundry facility, like all these things. And I was just picturing the project that it would get Storage, balcony, thank you. I was just like, it's getting to be a big project and kind of gnarly. And what I like about the 22 from the 25% bonus is I think we'll get more 2 and 3 bedrooms from that. Because now if you're a developer and you're capped at 22 units, you want to maximize your income, you're going to build a couple bigger ones so you can rent those for a lot more. You're not just going to build a bunch of shoeboxes, I think. You're not going to build 22 studios. You might. Sammy's telling me.
You're going to go with what the market demands. So you heard Paradigm literally look at the studies and say we need 50% 1 bedrooms, 30% 2 bedrooms, and 20% studio. That's what they're going to do, regardless
so then
of which one we pick.
That's a reason to go for the density bonus approach and not DUE with some kind of other caps and other rules and things. DUE actually has because it has a studio incentive, right? It gives you half a unit, for a studio. So I think. And again, the DUE penalizes larger units, which I'm concerned about, both with the income stuff too. I hear 2 votes for density bonus. I mean, I hear 3 on the fence. Which way are we going?
I'm not gonna. Sorry. No, I can go with the 25. It is simpler, that's for sure. I always hate reading something that has DUEs in it because it's like, well, it has no relation to reality. So. I mean, the 25% is fine.
All right, 25% is fine. That was the last topic that I did throw on there. Did I already say this? That I had added discussing the plan development approach, but I reviewed it, Yumi, and I'm fine with the ways you've written it. Staff's recommendation is fine with me.
I had one question that I'm not sure we got to last time. We may have. Just remind me if we did. It's on page 100. No, I don't know. It's on page 7-41. Going to the other section. Back to the other section, please. It's regarding outdoor area requirements, common outdoor area requirements in the site design section there. No common outdoor amenities required. I mean, should they be exempt? Should we just... I mean, it makes a project a lot easier. I get that. it makes a project a lot less nice.
Sorry, what are you asking, Coral?
It says items D and E there say that deed-restricted housing incentive projects shall be exempt from the common outdoor area requirements and the outdoor recreational amenity requirements.
Yeah.
Should they be exempt? That's my question to you guys.
Mitch?
Well, it certainly makes it a lot more pencilable if you do. But having been sitting here and watching people come in, Winter Creek is a good example where the condos came in and we just parks across the street and everybody, and it's not enough. You need to have your own park. And of course, those were the neighbors. So, I don't know. I'll have to think more about it. Ask somebody else.
Yeah. Amy?
Well, they do, obviously you have to have snow storage, you have to have stormwater treatment, and their landscaping. So I can see exempting them so that they, pencil it in, makes sense. And, you can't really say, nope, we won't put parking there. But, yeah, I kind of think that makes sense, because otherwise we're already asking them to do a lot, and then I don't want these things to be so expensive that then housing.
Sammy?
Agreed completely. And if people are seeking that density bonus, they may need that space to accommodate units.
No, I'm comfortable with that. I just think I wanted to discuss it because we're saying that these can be significantly lower quality sites.
I actually
a big
remember,
pile of snow is a good playground too.
I do remember actually. I think it was you, Amy, that said this last time we discussed this, which is that many people view living in Truckee as like you've got your parks all around, you've got your recreation all around. That's I think you said that, Amy. And I also, the way I think about this is when we require something, we're not requiring something of the developer. We're actually requiring the tenant to have to pay for something that they may or may not need. We have to ask ourselves, because every time we add something, we're taking the rent from $1,700 a month to $1,750 to $1,800 to $1,850, and we have to ask ourselves, do we really want to force the tenants to have to pay for a dog park or whatever, a dog run or whatever it is? Now, in some cases, I think we've agreed, storage, bike storage, balconies, we've agreed that those are requirements. But I think the way this is written is correct and give it, consistent with the goals of what we're trying to achieve. So I'm happy with it. Any other sections that want to get raised? Okay. Are we looking for a motion? Yeah.
Before we do that, let's go over everything we've talked about from November. And so you could just say, with those changes incorporated when you do your motion. So you're recommending to council a different AMI, the 150% AMI. You're recommending a change of the term of the deed restriction from in perpetuity to 55 years with a renewal of the deed restriction term length upon transfer. You're recommending to take out the 15% studio cap. Recommending a change to the storage requirements and the deck requirements. You're keeping the parking as is. We can remove that from the recommendation. You're recommending that the on-street parking should be maintained by the town and not the private property owner. Changes to the fully enclosed parking will be proposed as part of their resolution or their ordinance.
Could you please display the list you're reading?
Oh, sorry. I thought I had you guys there with me. Sorry about that. So we can go, here's where I was reading from originally. If there's anything that was incorrect, let me know. Parking, fully enclosed parking. Adjacent development, adding this diagram, changing the language, increasing the site coverage, decreasing the open space, removing some open space requirements for smaller sites, increasing the laundry facility ratio, requiring more monitoring for maintenance. You are forwarding notes that you are a little mixed on the plan developments about flexibility.
We can take that one out. I think we can discuss it.
Yeah.
I was the one that was making the big noise about that last time, and I'm fine with it.
So you're okay with leaving the very specific language that's okay.
Yeah.
We will remove that. And then the flexible design review, adding flexible design review options for all projects, regardless of whether or not a plan development is being proposed. So that would be at the director's discretion for smaller projects. Grammatical corrections, as always. And then the changes we discussed today would be to not cross-reference figures, put them in, remove a same plane for materials, update the tandem parking language, add eligibility for seniors and those with disabilities. You're recommending that we talk to Todd O'Donnell regarding the density requirements. There's historic standards. You're supporting changes to the materials, the material heading to siding materials for clarity. A window size, we haven't yet drafted that language, but you want to include something that makes each window not too big. We'll have to think about that. Updating the front setback fence requirements, exterior lighting, minor grammatical change. Changing the modification to existing resource title from location to siting, updating the board and batten for 8 inches to 12 inches boards as opposed to what was originally proposed. And there's 2 places at least that we need to update that, including attached addition materials to detached additions for historic structures, so expanding that list for detached additions, adding diagrams if possible, and then you're supporting a 25% density bonus. Okay. And then that's your...
I'll move to adopt Resolution 2025-15, taking following actions, recommending the amendments to be exempt from CEQA because the adoption of this ordinance is not a project pursuant to Sections 15060C2 and 15060C3 of the Title 14 of the California Code of Regulations, and because under Section 15061B3 of the state CEQA guidelines, the amendments are exempt from the requirements of CEQA because it can be seen with certainty that the provisions contained herein would not have the potential for causing a significant effect on the environment, and 2, recommending approval to the Town Council of Development Code amendments to create a deed-restricted housing incentives ordinance and related cleanup amendments as modified at this meeting this evening. Should we include November in that too? And the November meeting.
Second.
Roll call.
Chair Toops?
Yes.
Vice Chair Taylor?
Yes.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Commissioner Claren?
Absolutely yes.
Commissioner Kaufman?
Yes, please.
Motion passes. Wonderful. Jenna, staff reports. Coral did. Sorry.
I'll just, before I get into my staff notes for tonight, I was just reading, or I should say skimming a planning blog post lamenting the changing role of planning commissioners in the state of California. And I stumbled upon a verbatim, perhaps no task for planning commissioners today is an important as the task of creating objective design standards. And it made me giggle because, wow, it's like... Okay, so next month, I can guarantee that you are scheduled for a meeting. We've got another full one for you, though I don't think we'll be starting at 4 like we did tonight. We've got sorry, let me just pull up the agenda and make sure I cover everything. We have possibly a project amendment for the high altitude fitness facility. We think that that's happening. We should know more within a couple days. We will have a project amendment for the residences at Jaboom project. That'll be before you that evening. We possibly have some development code amendments that we think we're going to get on. And then there's a couple other question marks that we'll know more in probably within a week. So definitely we'll have a full agenda for you with anywhere between 3 to 4 projects.
I have Act 2 Follies rehearsal that night. So I'm going to have to make the balance call of, do I hit the Follies or do I volunteer for the Follies? Do I volunteer here? Since I'm producing the Follies, I kind of have to be there, so I'm not sure I'll be able to make it on the 21st.
Do we know of any other potential quorum issues that night, just so we can...
It's only a potential issue. I will be traveling in Scottsdale at that point, and I have booked flights to come back. Obviously, I'd rather not do that. I don't know if we have any options to put this on a different date, like the following week or something like that. Is that even remotely possible? Judging by Danielle's face, it's a no.
Yeah, we've got council the week before and the week after a planning commission meeting, which would be tough just for scheduling.
And for me, anytime, and then the 22nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th are shows, so I won't be able to make those for sure.
Chair Toops or Vice Chair?
I'll be here.
Is it Taylor? Okay. Commissioner Kaufman? Okay, so we for sure have 3. Okay.
And
we can
make
chat
plans to be here, but if there were any possibility of doing it on a different night, it would be better.
Okay, so you're physically not in Truckee that
I am not in
night.
Truckee that week. I will fly back for it if that's what's needed to keep all this stuff moving forward.
Okay. Well, right now we're seeing a quorum, which is probably the most critical, given that we have a housing project on for that night for sure. So we can maybe touch base at our staff meeting tomorrow just to explore other possibilities, and then we can follow back up. But most likely we'll probably be looking at having it that same night, just given that we tend to struggle finding alternate dates, and we already have a special hearing for council. That's a good point. Our council meeting is April 7th, not the 14th. Okay, we'll follow up.
All right. Any other information?
I can probably make the 14th work if I had to.
Okay.
Easier than the 21st. Let's put it that way for me personally.
I'd be flying from Austin instead. I would prefer after the Follies. After the so the last week of the month would be any day fine.
Is that it for staff reports?
Yes, my apologies. That's it. I was taking notes. Yep, good to go.
Commissioner reports.
I attended a lovely community event, which I have frequently gone to, the Humane Society fundraiser, the I Did a Run, and I would like to congratulate Rosie and Podium Sitter Ace for their performance. The Planning Commission was well represented at this event. We had a quorum.
It's very fun. All right. Anything else? All right. This meeting is adjourned, I think.